Hello. How you guys all doing? Oh, relaxing day for me. Well, I don't relaxing. As you can see, went and got my hair cut, right? Went and got my hair cut, got my beard nicely trimmed up. Lovely place just down the street. Did a great job, bang up job. Shout out to James. Thank you so much for the haircut, for the trim. I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay, and I pity any girl who isn't me today. Fa la 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 la. Then, of course, half-price wings. Took a walk around, had some nice chats with some people. Came home, did the research for the day, and hit record, and here we are. And boy, let me tell you, everyone is losing their minds. For good reason. We are now looking at a moment that is separating the wheat from the chaff, that is revealing. These are moments that I would like to call super revealing. That we are living in a moment that is showing everybody just who's on what side. Ligon to Z, good to see you. I'm just going to pause for a quick moment here. I think that this camera can be zoomed in a little bit more. Properties. I am a super big professional. I know what I'm doing. Do. There you go. I think that's a little bit better. It cuts off this poster here, but for one cast, it's totally fine. I've got to mess with these settings a little bit more. Anyway. Kratos. Yep, I'm fine with that. I would love to do some Kratos cosplay. Are you kidding me? I went and got some, I just need the red streak, right? Do some straight up Kratos God of War. Absolutely. I'm completely fine with that. Kratos God of War. I just need to get the outfit, right? And then we're like off to the races. Also the abs. John is starting his Lenin transformation. Hello, Mikhail. How are you doing? This is, in any case, this moment that we are in right now is an extremely revealing moment. This is the moment when people really show what side of the political equation they are on. That there are lots of people who have ostensibly been, who have stated that their support is with the Palestinian people, but then when the Palestinian people fight back, suddenly it's a horrible situation, right? It's a horrible, ridiculous situation, right? Jack Frost, good to see you. Instead of his blade of chaos, he wields a hammer and sickle on chains. Now we're talking. Let's make this game, right? It's it'll be God of War, Communist Edition. Gotta be honest, it's deeply harrowing to see how pro-colonizer almost everyone is. Yeah, we're just gonna go through it, man. Especially now, Israel is using white phosphorus in broad daylight for everyone to see. We've got video evidence of it now. For those who don't know, white phosphorus is completely indiscriminate, specifically designed to maim and kill as many civilians as possible in a large area. It has no military use whatsoever. Israel is gleefully committing a complete and total genocide with full, unequivocal support of all Western countries. And the liberal so-called progressives are ecstatically cheering for it and calling for genocide of all Palestinians because they read somewhere someone said brown people beheaded 40 babies with zero evidence, and their racist brains went straight to thinking, yes, I knew it. I knew brown people were savages. Kill them all. Yes, yes, yes. The use of white phosphorus is an overt and obvious war crime, even between warring nations, right? Like, so if you were to stand up and attempt to justify the use of white phosphorus at all, you are a piece of shit scumbag. Even if it was a full-scale open war between equal fighters, which it isn't, which it outright isn't. And for clarity, there have been claims that have come out, as there always are, by the colonizers, right? That there have been beheadings of babies and mass-scale rapes. Well, breaking, Turkey's Anadolu agency reports that the Israeli army has told them there is no information to confirm reports that Hamas beheaded babies. So, turns out that was a lie. Big shock. Anybody out there that was like, Hamas beheaded babies, you are gullible, right? Stop just uncritically believing what the CIA and what obvious propagandists are telling you, right? Quit it, right? Quit it. Midnight Rose, liberals, I don't hate Palestine, I hate Hamas. By the way, let's turn all of Gaza into a parking lot and literally obliterate them, yeah. And this whole argument that says, I don't hate Palestine, I hate Hamas, is no different than saying, I don't hate Palestine, I just hate it when they fight back. That's what they're saying. That's what that means. That when liberals and conservatives and Nazis talk about peace, what they mean is obedience. What they mean is that they think the Palestinians should die quietly. So, and then in regards to the allegations of rape, Los Angeles Times retracts allegations of Hamas rapes. Such reports have not been substantiated. Again, so we're going to see people come in here probably today, probably people trying to say this beheading babies and the rape kind of thing, and we can just say very cleanly and very clearly, no evidence. The people who said it have retracted it. The Israeli army itself has said that there is no confirmed reports of it. So stop being gullible, right? But gullibility is important when you are worshiping the patriarchy, right? Like when you are worshiping the system of capital, when you are worshiping the idea that daddy knows best. And well, daddy said it, right? Daddy said it. Speaking of that very thing, worth bringing up whenever I get talking about this this daddy stuff. Finally, Jordan Peterson. The most well-known intellectual in the world, according to National Posts. The UN is an evil joke. Why? Because the UN says Israel's sieges on Gaza are prohibited under humanitarian law, which they are. So, Peterson, finally, if you have had any doubt whatsoever in your mind, if you have been on the fence at all about whether or not Jordan Peterson is a Nazi, here you are. Saying that an institution is an evil joke because they consider the sieges on Gaza to be prohibited under humanitarian law makes you a fucking Nazi. Pretty much black and white. That Peterson wants Israel to siege Gaza, right? Just straight up, mask off, swastika in the middle of his forehead. Jordan Peterson, obviously a Nazi, and it's obvious, right? Anyone want to push me back on that? Anyone, right? Anyone want to be like, well, you know, John, not every Nazi. There is such a thing as an innocent Nazi. Of course, unsurprisingly, right? Since the beginning of the conflict, over the past 5 days, right? This is the 5-day look at the share prices for RTX Corporation. Oh, look, it's going up. General Dynamics. Oh, my goodness. Northrop Grumman Corp. Whoa, what the heck happened here? Lockheed Martin. Whoa, for those who don't know, these are weapons manufacturers, right? Because everybody knows somebody's got to build these bombs, right? We're going to just indiscriminately bomb the area with white phosphorus. Who makes white phosphorus? Whoa, what a money-making opportunity, right? When war equals profit and you are led by the profit motive, when you worship money and nothing else, war equals money, you're going to see more war. It's very straightforward. It's just very, very, very straightforward, right? And the profits for Lockheed Martin, for the Northrop Group, for all of these weapons manufacturers, wow, they're making more money than they ever have. Wow, huge, big jumps. Big jumps. And of course, this seems to be the attitude. Bomb, bad bomb, Russia. Britain, agreeable bomb. America, good bomb. Ukraine, very good bomb. Israel, what bomb? Right? This didn't happen. This isn't a thing that's obviously happening. Yeah, it honestly makes me feel deeply numb. Colonizers demanding humanity from their victims is unironically the vilest shit ever. Yeah. And that's how it's always been. During 9/11, like post 9/11 and the invasion of Iraq, right? You can see people like Sam Harris is the best example of this. That people who commit suicide bombings are worse than our invasion. But we are completely permitted to invade them. That's totally understandable. But should they fight back, right? And this is a position he still holds. He said it to Russell Brand fairly recently, right? That if you fight back against people who invade you, then you are the one that's morally culpable, right? This is a very common position that's held amongst thinkers, if you want to call them that, thinkers in the West, that if you defend yourself, if you fight back against our aggression, because we consider, like we go along with Israel's position, that Israel are benevolent occupiers, right? That it's not that we deny that they are occupying the region, it's that they are occupying the region for the good of the region, that it's good that they're there, right? And so anybody who fights back against them being there, and this extends to, like, for goodness sakes, I'm going to read this, right? Because this is Netanyahu just talking about Gaza. The main thing is, first of all, to strike them, not once, but several times, so painfully that the price they pay is unbearable. So far, the price tag is not unbearable. I mean, a large-scale attack on the Palestinians, causing them to fear that everything's about to collapse. Fear is what brings them to... And then someone says, hold on, but then again, the world will say, we're the aggressors. Yeah, they can say whatever they want. Aren't you afraid of what they'll say, Bibi? Especially today with the U.S. I know how they are. America is something that you can easily maneuver and move in the right direction. And even if they say something, so then they say something. So what? 80% of Americans support us. It's absurd. Look, I wasn't afraid to maneuver with the Clintons. I wasn't afraid to confront Clinton, and I wasn't afraid to go against the UN. What happened with the Oslo Accords? The accords which were ratified by the parliament, I asked before the 96 elections. Will you fulfill them? I said yes, subject to reciprocity and minimizing pullouts. I gave my own interpretation to the agreements in such a way that will allow me to stop the race back towards the 1967 border. How do we manage to do this? Nobody defined what military faculties are. So I also define them as being security zones. The entire Jordan Valley, for me, is a military facility. Nobody has. Yes, like the Beat Shean Valley. So you see, go figure. But then there was the question, who will define these military facilities? I received a letter from Secretary of State Warren Christopher and me to Arafat at the same time, saying that Israel and Israel alone will define the military facilities, their locations and sizes. Now, they didn't want to give me this letter. So I refused to ratify the Hebron Accords of 97. I stopped the government meeting and said, I won't sign. And only when the letter has arrived during that meeting, to me and to Arafat, I signed the Hebron Accords. It's better to give 2% than 100%, and this is the choice we faced. You gave 2%, but you stopped the withdrawal rather than 100%. Like, just straight up saying outright, we have the right to define what is a military facility, so we can just bomb whatever we like. And they are. Right? They are. They're just bombing whatever they like. Just indiscriminate white phosphorus bombing. A very clear, obvious, very straightforward war crime that people like Jordan Peterson support. Right? Very straightforwardly. That our genocide is good. It is right for us to be there. And this, of course, extends to organizations like the New York Times, right? The anti-Israel left needs to take a hard look at itself. How much do you guys want to bet? How much do you guys want to bet that if I read this thing aloud, there will be no mention whatsoever of the occupancy, of the occupation? Who wants to bet? How much money do we want to put on the table that they will simply not mention the obvious, overt, very clear history of the region? Who wants to bet that no one is actually going to talk about the reality of the situation at all? That this is so very clearly an occupation supported by Britain initially and now America, right? Who wants to bet that no one is actually going to talk about the reality that this is very, very obviously the United States going in, creating a military base in the region? Do I not have this ready? For goodness sakes. Right? For goodness sakes. We literally have current President Joe Biden saying things like, I am a Zionist. We have him on video. I had the video, but I guess I lost it, but it's fine. It'll resurface. I bet you it's in my in the Discord somewhere. In any case, we literally have Joe Biden saying, we need Israel in the region. And if an Israel did not exist, we would need to create it. That the $3 billion we invest in Israel is the best investment we have. Like, it's so very obvious what is happening. That the United States is supporting a genocide against the Palestinian people so that they can have a military base in the region. It's so clear and so obvious that to pretend like something else is going on is a worship of the system itself, is a worship of the system of the patriarchy. Like, you have to basically just believe what daddy says at this point to go along with this absurdist nonsense. You have to have a kind of childish clutching onto the belief that daddy wouldn't lie. Yes, he would, sweetheart. Yes, he would. Mikhail, if you donate $1 to the Patreon, I invite you to the Discord. That's the deal. That's the deal. It's the Patreon is in the description. If you donate at least $1, you get into the Discord. And that's the deal. I don't have very many. Oh, did you? Oh my God. Then I will send you a link, my man. Absolutely. Sorry. Oh God. Maybe send me another email, okay? So that we can 100% get connected. I must have just missed that, man. So sorry. My apologies. We'll get you in the Discord, okay? I'll do that right at the end of the show. I'll even make a little note for myself here so that I don't forget, because I have a notoriously bad memory. Notepad. Invite Mikhail to Discord. Sorry. My bad. We'll see you soon. That's great. Yeah, at least this whole thing has really shown the true colors of a lot of people. And anybody who is sort of on the fence, right? Yeah, I understand platinum. Somebody on Platinum Sold has said, somebody on Platinum Sold has pointed out the kind of paradox of a communist limiting access to Discord. Yeah, I understand, bud. But you're right. And I know that you're just being playful. I understand. But it is, I hate it. I hate the money. I do. I hate the money. I hate asking for money. I hate that the money exists. I don't like using the money. My deal with myself and with everybody out there is that should I ever come to a point where I am getting enough money from doing this to pay my bills, I am simply going to stop asking. I'm simply going to just say, okay, that's good. I'm getting enough money. I don't need any more money. And I'm going to stop asking, and I'm going to stop interacting in that way. I will still, because of the trolling thing, I definitely still will create that barrier. I don't want just random people in the Discord. I want people who are committed to the cause and who are committed to what we're doing here. And if you can't commit a single dollar, then I'm not interested, right? Real straightforward. But yes, at the same time, money, right? Fuck the money. God is dead. The faithful killed it. Yeah. The problem with Israel is that it's a Jewish ethno-state and not a trans ethno-state. That's right. If they were flying a rainbow flag, America would be losing its mind. Yeah, it's not too difficult to know what to expect out of these pieces and clowns. Well, what's interesting, right? And this, I think, to tie it back into what Midnight has just said here, which I think is true. At least the whole thing has really shown the true colors of a lot of people. There's so much pearl clutching from liberals and fake leftists over the colonization, taking up arms when they were quiet about the 60-plus years of colonization of apartheid. And to me, it really has driven in a nail. I do think that this is I hate to bring up Peterson again, but it really is this moment right here for Peterson is happening to a lot of people right now. That it's a clear dividing line, something that you can easily point to, something easy to point to be, okay, you are a Nazi or a Nazi collaborator or a Nazi apologist, right? That the defining characteristic is no longer, are they a liberal or a conservative, or are they on the left, are they center, or any of that kind of stuff. It literally is now, what type of Nazi are they? Right? Are they just a Nazi? Are they a Nazi collaborator? Are they a Nazi apologist? That's the kind of level of discourse that surrounds people like this now, and that's how it is basically to be understood. It reveals the Liberal Party, and again, the fact that this is happening on the tail end. Literally, the Liberal government stands up and applauds a Nazi in Parliament, knowingly, obviously knowingly. You've got to be a dimwit to think otherwise. Knowingly applauds a Nazi in Parliament, and then this happens. And what do the Liberals do? Nazism is good. We support a genocide based on ethnic lines. Zionism is a form of Nazism. It is black and white. It's very straightforward. And our country and America and everybody. Here's Joe Biden standing up and declaring himself to be a Nazi, right? And we're starting to see why this really actually matters, right? Is that if you are supporting an ongoing genocide in a region, right? And incidentally, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, train police in America. Right? A lot of police forces get training from the IDF on how to act and how to interact with the public and how to be. So what the fuck do you think is going on? Right? What the fuck do you think is going on? What do you think is going to happen with Cop City? What do you think is going to happen with all these places? And I mean, it's also just been extremely revealing of our quote unquote media that the reason it's become fairly obvious, it's very crystallizing what's going on in our media sphere. The reason why the conservatives and corporate-owned media are going after the CBC so hard is because the CBC has stood up and they refuse to declare Hamas a terrorist group, which actually puts them in step with the rest of the world. That the rest of the world does not call Hamas a terrorist organization. Do I actually have that? I thought I had that. Yeah, I do. Like, who recognizes Hamas as a terrorist organization? The Red recognized Hamas as a terrorist organization. Not surprisingly, the people who support Israel, right? So the Nazis. The Green don't recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization. Primarily, the entire rest of the fucking world, right? And incidentally, the CBC. The CBC does not recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization and does not refer to Hamas as a terrorist organization. And its rationale for that is that declaring Hamas a terrorist organization is taking a position on the conflict, that their goal is to be objective, right? Always the same map. It's always the same map every single time. It's almost as though battle lines have been drawn and we are in an ongoing, unfolding conflict, right? People keep saying like, "Oh man, World War III it's about to happen." This is World War III. Like, we are in it. We are currently experiencing World War III, and we have been experiencing World War III for quite some time. It's just that some people are becoming just aware of it, right? People are just becoming cognizant of it, one step at a time. They're steadily beginning to clue in to the idea that, oh man, there's a war. And people are treating each flare-up, each time there are bombs dropped, as an independent section or an independent thing that happened, right? When it's actually all the same conflict. It's one conflict going forward. The heart of it is obviously the United States and NATO, right? And NATO, of course, being a continuation of Nazism. That NATO is a Nazi organization. It always has been. And it has continued the initiative and continued the goals of the Nazis in a less dramatic fashion. But the conflict has continued forward from World War II based on these exact same principles. That not much has changed. The big change and what NATO and liberals generally learned is that, we can actually push our economic and military agenda forward pretty successfully as long as we ease up on the ethnic and racial stuff. As long as we ease up on the idea that, like, we should round up ethnic groups, we should purge the society of minority groups, white racial purity, all of that. If we ease up on that and say the solution is more female generals, right? The solution is more black people in the military, right? If we open up diversity and have a big conversation about diversity in the empire, right? And create a more rainbow empire that allows different racial groups in, then we can move forward with this Nazi agenda pretty successfely. That neoliberalism is a evolution of Nazism, of fascism rather, is an evolution of fascism, and that evolution of fascism is get rid of the white ethno-state, get rid of the idea of white power, get rid of all of that, but keep all of the economic ideas and the class-based ideas and the merger of the business class and the government, keep all of that intact. And that's more or less what we have seen and what we are continuing to see. And this is all boiling up over time into very clearly, like, it pays to remember that Israel was created. This whole project of creating Israel was actually created before World War II officially kicks off, right? That it actually begins in the 1920s or the 1930s, right? And that the push happens post World War II, but the seeds are planted well before. So the goal of having a Western military base in the Middle East through Israel was always there. So this is all we like to pretend as though all of these events are disconnected, but they're not. It is all one unfolding conflict, with the aggressor and the driving force being the West through NATO. We are in World War III, and it is going to kick up into something very dramatic. It has to, right? It has to. There's no point pretending like it's not. There's no point sitting here acting like, well, maybe it won't. Like, the people who are at the helm of the country are psychopaths. They're telling you that they're psychopaths. They're overt, outright saying in front of your face constantly over and over and over again that we are bloodthirsty, murdering Nazis. Like, what's it going to take, What's it going to take? Yeah, who knows? Maybe in 100 years, when all the Palestinians are dead, liberals will start virtue signaling about their genocide as if they cared when it happened. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what they'll do. Just like they do with the First Nations people right now, right? Like, truth and reconciliation. We need to come to terms with that genocide that we definitely committed and then committed again and then did again, right? Like, we're not going to learn anything. Yeah, World War III began in 1945 after Germany and Japan surrendered. Yeah. Yeah. Like, with the creation of NATO, and like, there's no one point that you could point to. There's no moment that you can point to say this is the moment. But like, the battle lines are certainly drawn. And America is pounding the drum to get into conflict with China, right? And they're already in conflict with Russia. It is not going to be too much longer until people are going to have to pick sides in an ongoing conflict, and resources are going to be traded between those sides exclusively. How is this all going to end? It's very difficult to see that it's going to end sensibly, right? And the technology that we have now is much more aggressive, right? Much more aggressive. And it's very, very obvious that cooler heads are not going to prevail. It's very, very clear that cooler heads are not going to prevail. The entire political apparatus of the West is pro-genocide and is on board with this, right? The entire apparatus of the West. And it is not going to stand up and condemn these actions. It is not going to stand up and say anything rational or reasonable. It's not going to do that. That we are going to see our society spiral downward and become more and more and more and more unhinged, right? Just how when Justin Trudeau stood up and honored a Nazi in Parliament, that empowered Nazis. Well, actions like this, what does that do? It empowers weapons manufacturers. It empowers the war machine. And it empowers people who are pro-genocide to be openly vocal about that genocide and to call for blood. And we've been seeing it. Like, for goodness sakes, we've been seeing it. That these people are not are while simultaneously turning around and condemning people for actually standing up and being anti-genocide, right? And to me, this is the distinction, and this is the language that I hope infects the discourse, and I hope it starts here. I hope that we can get this idea of anti-genocide and pro-genocide into the conversation. Did Zelensky ever apologize for giving Hunka a standing ovation? No, why would he? He knew. Like, he understands. Like, they all understand what's going on. And they know that they're not paying any political consequences for it, right? The liberals were already walking out the door. They were already on their way out, and they know it. And they're not doing anything to try to prevent that. And so they lose nothing by doing it. The conservatives are the ones that are going to take power. They lose nothing for doing it. right? Like these people lose nothing for having done that. And they gain quite a bit, right? They signal to their Nazi friends in Israel that they are pro-Nazi. They signal to their Nazi friends in Ukraine that they are pro-Nazi. They signal to their Nazi friends in NATO and the WEF that they are Nazis, right? And that they're pro-Nazi and that they're going to go along with all of this. It's you know what a dog whistle is. Well, here you have a dog foghorn, right? Here you have a dog foghorn. Got a fellow on Twitch, Charmar Regiment. Israel also stands for the genocide of Palestinians. Absolutely it does. That's basically what we're talking about here, my man. That's what this is all about. Like, we are watching our society take the mask off. That's what this is. And it is happening, like pro-Israel protesters in New York City demand Gaza flattened, kill all Palestinians, right? The news media coming out, barbarism celebrated in Toronto streets. Literally, people in the National Post, I've got a good one here. Tolerating the glorification of terror and slaughter is societal suicide. John Ivison puts forward an argument for why we should not allow protests like this to occur, right? How we should clamp down on peaceful protest. Like that, he puts forward the argument. Canada cannot allow pluralism and reasonable accommodation to plant the seeds of our self-destruction. So literally, what are you suggesting, John Ivison? Are you suggesting we get cops to round up these protesters? Because that seems to be the solution that you're reaching for, John Ivison. And all of it, right? All of it is based around you can essentially ignore and say what you like. You can essentially say what you like as long as you ignore this. That's it. Like, this is how fragile the system of capital has become and how fragile these narratives have become. That you can dismantle them with a single photo. What these people are doing, and I've said it over and over again and I'll continue to say it, is they're watching Star Wars, they're seeing Luke Skywalker shoot the rocket into the Death Star, they're seeing the Death Star explode, and then they're condemning Luke Skywalker and saying, what about the innocent stormtroopers? Like, that is what we are watching. That is what is happening. And it is actually that simple. That Israel is a genocidal apartheid state. It can't be anything else. Netanyahu is confessing it. We have video of him talking about it. If you watch Gaza Fights for Freedom by Abby Martin, she goes through the history of this painstakingly. It is very clear what is happening in Israel. And we are not only funding it, but celebrating it. And moreover, pretending as though it doesn't exist. And that's the only defense that they have left, right? Is this ignorance? Is this feigning stupidity? Is this pretending not to know what history is? Pretending like you couldn't just punch into Google. Pretending like you can't just say Palestine, Israel, history, timeline. Right? Pretending like you can't just punch that in and just get from literally the Washington Post and the New York Times, like the institutions themselves that are now currently denying the existence of that history and that conflict have themselves actually documented that themselves. Right? So there's this just feigning ignorance and feigning illiteracy and pretending as though the villain of the piece is the Rebel Alliance and Luke Skywalker. That the true villain of the story of Robin Hood was Robin Hood. That the true villain of the story of Harry Potter was Harry Potter. This is what the death cult is currently trying to convince us of. And it's embarrassing. Like, at this point in the game, it's just childishly embarrassing. Like, this New York Times article written by Brett Stevens is embarrassing. And I keep referring to this one, so I think I actually want to read this one aloud. Just to reveal, like, the New York Times is the highest level media that we get. If it's coming out of the New York Times, it's considered the very tippy top of the hierarchy, right? So let's see what the New York Times is saying. On Saturday morning, because that's when history begins, Saturday morning, in southern Israel, Hamas murdered hundreds of people. The Rebel Alliance shot a rocket at a music festival and kidnapped others at gunpoint to serve as human shields in Gaza. Got to make it sound as bad as possible, right? As if we haven't been creating an open-air prison. But remember, history starts on Saturday morning. On Sunday afternoon in Midtown Manhattan, a speaker at a rally of pro-Palestinian and left-wing groups celebrated that atrocity. Fighting back against a genocide is an atrocity. One of thousands suffered by Israelis over the past few days, which we later learned included killing of babies and toddlers, which again, we affirm, the Israeli army has told there's no information, right? So New York Times just spreading outright lies now. What's their link here for this? Their link is themselves. Straight up, their link is themselves. So the New York Times says that it is true, and so therefore it is true, even though the Israeli military itself says that it didn't happen. But remember, of course, history started on Saturday morning. As you might have seen, there was some sort of rave or desert party where they were having a great time until the resistance came in electrified hang gliders and took at least several dozen hipsters, a speaker said. But I'm sure they're doing very fine, despite what the New York Post says. He was met with cheers. The fact that they came in with electrified hang gliders sounds super awesome. Just going to put that out, right? Just going to put that out there. Yet, Halitosis, the massive propaganda I've read today is shocking. They continue to try to sanitize, yet they blame Palestinians for everything. Yep. Do we have confirmation for rapes at the music festival? We actually have organizations like the Los Angeles Times retracting that allegation because there is no substantiation of those reports, which, I mean, is to be expected, right? Like, just like the baby killing allegation, there's just no evidence, right? And so why say it if there's no evidence of it? Oh, it's to make him look as bad as possible. Because history began on Saturday morning. I went to see the rally for myself. Would there even be perfunctory condemnation of Hamas's methods? Because, again, history started on Saturday. A brief nod of sympathy to Israel's anguish. Some banal nod to the cause of peace and nonviolence. Not that I heard. What I saw was giddiness and gloating, as if someone's team had won the World Cup. Hamas had perpetrated the largest single-day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. Got to evoke the Holocaust. And the crowd was euphoric. Yet the Rebel Alliance, after they blew up the Death Star, was euphoric. It's true. Similar scenes unfolded across the world. In London, an estimated 5,000 demonstrators gathered near the Israeli embassy and shot off fireworks towards the building. At a rally at the Sydney Opera House in Australia, chants of Free Palestine gave way to the underlying emotion. F the Jews. At Harvard, almost 36 campus groups opened a joint statement holding the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. A statement from Yale's for Palestine insisted that breaking out of a prison requires force, not desperate appeals to the colonizer. So here's the first time, and it was in a quote, that they've even acknowledged what the Palestinians are experiencing. Because, as we remember, history started on Saturday morning. Whatever else might be said about these demonstrations and declarations, give the protesters and manifesto writers points for honesty. Pro-Palestine, to many of them, is pro-Hamas. Yes, being pro-Alderon means being pro-Rebel Alliance. Correct. Anti-occupation is occupation to Israel's rights to exist in any form. Anti-occupation is opposition to Israel's right to exist in any form. Again, history begins on Saturday. Israelis are guilty by virtue of being Israelis, so their murder and humiliation is something to laugh at. Again, history starts on Saturday, so you can say whatever you like. When Zionism is genocide, an absolute correct statement that is 100% true, as placards as the demonstration put it, then no means are too awful to put a stop to it. Oh no, they blew up the Death Star! They blew up the Death Star! Won't someone please think of the innocent stormtroopers? Those innocent stormtroopers were just doing their job. If twice as many Israelis had been murdered on Saturday, the beginning of history, would it have chastened the demonstrators or made them doubly glad by the algorithm in which the terminally self-righteous become cheerleaders for slaughter? So for this guy, being a cheerleader for fighting back against genociders is worse than the genocide itself, remembering, of course, that history begins on Saturday. Not all the far left was quite as far gone. The New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, I love this, I just love this. Not all of the far left was quite as far gone. And who's the far left, according to this writer? The New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. So basically a right-wing group. Like, the Democratic Socialists of America are essentially like center-right in terms of how politics actually is, right? Far left. Had promoted the rally on social media, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the group's most prominent member, right? So center-right, maybe even right-wing, denounced the rally and issued a 66-word statement in which she condemned Hamas's attack in the strongest possible term. So showing that the Democratic Party is the graveyard of leftists' ideas. That if you want to kill your leftism, if you want to make sure that leftism dies, join the Democratic Party. Right? That's a surefire way to kill any idea that there is going to be any kind of leftist resistance. That was followed by a demand for an immediate ceasefire and de-escalation. This I actually am fine with. That if you're going to stand up and say, ceasefire, okay, right? Okay. Are we going to negotiate? Are we actually going to talk about this? Someone should tell the New York congresswoman to call for a ceasefire now is to shield the killers, so those who defend themselves from genocide are killers, from consequences, and deny their victims, so the people who committed genocide are now victims, the right to effective self-defense. So the people who are committing a genocide are now the ones who are defending themselves. You see how they've completely inverted the worldview. That you see how they flipped everything upside down. Because history begins on Saturday, right? It is, in the language of the old left, objectively pro-Hamas, even as it masquerades as a call for peace. Yet, if you would like to have peace, then you need to end the genocide, right? And if you're not going to end the genocide, then don't be surprised when a bunch of these 18-year-old kids who you've locked in an open-air prison fight back. Oh no, how shocking. The average age in Palestine, the average age in the Gaza Strip is 18. 40% of the population is 14 and younger, right? That means 16% are older than 14, with the average age being 18. Yeah, a bunch of these kids are going to get together and do cool shit like get on electrified gliders and blow shit up. For sure. They're absolutely going to do that. Because you've done absolutely nothing to try to prevent this genocide that's ongoing, because history starts on Saturday. Something similar must be said about a much broader swath of the left that looks in heartfelt horror at what happened on Saturday, but rarely stops to wonder whether it played any role in creating the moral and intellectual climate for what has unfolded. So it wasn't the genocide that created the climate. It wasn't the genocide that created the circumstances to allow this to happen. It was the left. That the left was responsible for this. So now we're just looking at high-level Nazism and Nazi apologencia at this point. I'm talking about the bien-pensants for whom anti-Zionism, not just legitimate opposition to various aspects of Israeli policy, but the denial of Israel's right to exist in any form, is a respectable political position, rather than simply an updated form of anti-Semitism. Right. Being anti-Nazi is now anti-Semitism. This is a fairly classic, well-trodden argument, that if you would like to critique Nazis, then you're an anti-Semite. I'm talking about United Nations rapporteurs and once great human rights organizations who traffic in the lie. In the lie. Interesting. That Israel deliberately created an open-air, quote-unquote, open-air prison in Gaza. Never mind that Gaza shares a border with Egypt, or that Israel vacated the territory nearly 20 years ago only to be repaid by endless assaults from above and below the ground. This is comedy. This is denialism and revisionism of the highest possible level, right? So first of all, the lie that Israel deliberately created an open-air prison, it absolutely has. Like, to pretend otherwise is to live in a delusional dream world, which this guy does because history starts on Saturday. Never mind that Gaza shares a border with Egypt. There's a fucking river, my man. What, people just going to get across the river? Like, again, you live in a delusional dream world, right? Because history started on Saturday. Or that Israel vacated the territory. Right. Israel vacated the territory after being there committing a genocide, and then they left an open-air prison there so that they didn't need to have to constantly lose people to a conflict that they were inflicting on the population. Right? They want us to congratulate the Zionists for leaving the genocide. We'll give them this territory. Aren't we good guy? Aren't we a good guy? Aren't we the best? Aren't we the best? We gave them a little bit of territory. We're the greatest. Thank you, Sip for Rusk. I appreciate that. Nice Engels beard, right? Yeah. Israel vacated the territory nearly 20 years ago after committing a genocide there for 40 years. And they've been only repaid by endless assaults from above and below the ground because they created an open-air prison, my man. Like, it's really straightforward. I'm talking about the university presidents who stand for free speech when it comes to anti-Semitism, i.e. anti-Zionism, right? Because anti-Semitism is now if you are anti-Nazi, i.e. anti-Zionist, then you are anti-Semitic. And that's a one-to-one correlation to these people who think that history started on Saturday. But become notably censorious when it comes to other forms of controversial speech. What's the other form of controversial speech? The Black Justice League was a terrorist organization. Yeah. This guy's a clown. Like, this is the highest level of media in the West right now. This isn't like The Sun, right? This is the New York Times. I'm talking about the political leaders who repeatedly promise solidarity with Israel only to quickly demand restraint when Israel seeks to destroy the infrastructure by which Hamas maintains its war machine. Right? Because history starts on Saturday. There is no genocide. There is no genocide. I'm talking about narratives that seem calibrated to create the outrageous impression that Israeli soldiers deliberately kill Palestinian children. They do. We literally have them on tape saying it out loud, admitting it, gleefully celebrating it. Like, we know. It's very obvious. You've got to be a dimwit or a Nazi collaborator, who this guy is, obviously. I'm talking about the people whose fury at the Israeli government never seems to abate, but who pause rarely to observe that Hamas is a dictatorship of religious zealots, or that President Mahmoud Abbas of Palestinian Authority is a fulminating anti-Semite. We do not have the moral credibility to judge Hamas or the Palestinians. Full stop. We do not have the moral credibility or the moral high ground to say that what they are doing is wrong. Why? Because we are the ones committing the genocide against them. A genocide that this guy denies because, again, history started on Saturday. Taken separately, none of this directly threatens a single Israeli life. Taken together, it goes far to explain how Israel, the nation of the Jews, is routinely treated, as some have said, like the Jew of nations, with consequences spelled in blood. If some of the anti-Israel left find themselves looking on in horror at what happens on Saturday when history started, now is a good time for them to take a long, hard look at themselves. Okay, I will. I stand against the genocide, unlike you. You didn't mention it, right? Straight up did not mention the genocide of the Palestinians. So this guy, Bret Stephens, is a Nazi apologist. That this article is Nazi apologencia. And articles like this were written about the Holocaust. Articles like this were written about Nazi Germany, right? And Bret Stephens is now writing one today, right? On October 10th, because in Bret Stephens' mind, right, there is no genocide. We don't need to discuss the genocidal regime of the Zionists that are happening. No, history started on Saturday. Nothing else matters, right? That when the Rebel Alliance blew up the Death Star, it was the Death Star that was the victim, right? It was the Death Star that was the victim. And of course, this type of Nazi apologetics continues on. The Toronto Star, right? Lou writes, but babies in incubators. We literally have the Israeli army has said that there's no information to confirm that happened, right? John, you know what's really, really, really funny now that you mention it? Oh boy, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, I mean, Thatcher called Mandela a terrorist. Of course she did. Fucking creepy weirdo that she was. This is a good opportunity to bring back this map here, right? Let's bring back this. My favorite is this moment here. There it is. Zionist military forces expelled at least 750,000 Palestinians, destroyed over 530 villages, captured 78% of historic Palestine. The remaining 22% was divided into two parts, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. But according to Bret Stephens, history begins on Saturday. Barbarism, celebrated on Toronto streets. On Saturday, over 1,000 Israeli Jews were executed at point-blank range, shot, stabbed, throat slit. Their slaughter is being celebrated. Oh no, they blew up the Death Star. On Saturday, Israel tragically let its guard down. Can't give any credit to Hamas, eh? Can't give any credit whatsoever. All right, bread cultist. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. I'm sorry if I do got to say, I'm sorry if I'm taking such a light tone of this today, but I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. Our society is collapsing into Nazism. It's very obvious. The mask is coming off. Soon our superheroes will be literal Nazis. You got to stay sane. When I was in funeral services, there was a thing called gallows humor that we engaged in quite a lot. He's an American conservative. Should change that to Nazi, but that's okay. At least a Nazi apologist. So what are we looking at? We're looking at the not to be confused with thing. For the Australian rules football player, see Bret Stephens. For the neo-Nazi blogger, oh my God. That's so funny, dude. It'd be funnier if he was a parody, but do we have a picture of this guy? Because I got to tell you, I've never seen Bret Stephens and Bret Stephens in the same room together. Now that you mention it. Never actually seen these two gentlemen in the same room at the same time together. I wonder why. It would be completely unshocking if a Nazi apologist like Bret Stephens was also just running a straight-up neo-Nazi blog. I'd be like, yeah, that checks out, right? That completely checks out. And so we could just say straight out, the New York Times Nazism confirmed, right? Yeah, Israel, we don't behead babies. We drop apartment buildings on them. No, white phosphorus, my man. White phosphorus. That's what Israel is doing right now. The usage of white phosphorus, widely considered a war crime, even if it's against equal matched foes, right? Like if America and Russia were to go toe to toe and actually duke it out, and one of them used white phosphorus, that would still be considered widely a war crime, right? What the hell is that laugh? What laugh? Like, this is so fucked up. Like, the whole thing is fucked up, dude. And again, I am sorry. I am sorry if I'm laughing about it, but it's just like, it's too horrifying. Like, it's too horrifying. The U.S. government is preparing to send billions in emergency aid to Israel faster than you can say Iron Dome. Meanwhile, Maui is still picking up the pieces of their devastated communities 2 months later. We have a fellow in Twitch saying SSSR top. I don't know what that means, my man. But good to see you. Good to see you. So, on Saturday, this is from the Toronto Star, barbarism celebrated on Toronto's streets. On Saturday, Israel tragically let its guard down. The result? The greatest number of Jews killed in one day since the Holocaust. Hey, where have I heard that before? Was it Nazi apologist Bret Stephens that said it? As of Tuesday afternoon, the number of dead is at least 1,000, though it will likely be higher by the time you're reading this. Over 2,200 have been injured and likely over 150 taken captive in Gaza. Their fates are unclear. Just to put this in historical perspective, right? Like, literally in 2023 alone, you have probably 250 deaths, right? And then 2022, another 250, basically another 500. Down you go. Or you have a 50-day assault in 2014 that killed over 2,000 people. Like, the critique seems to be that Hamas fought back. That seems to be the critique, right? Right? Almost as soon as word got out that this massacre was being perpetrated in Israel, many rejoiced. From the Middle East to Europe to right here in Canada. There was celebration over the brutal... Like, this is malpractice. This is journalistic malpractice, is what this is. You do not get to call yourself a journalist if you are not going to talk about the context of this event. Right? Yeah, truly a tragedy that Israel's experienced 0.001% of what Palestine has experienced for 70 years. Nobody thought to call the barbaric practices hotline? That's a good one, dude. That's a good one. On Sunday in Mississauga and on Monday at Nathan Phillips Square and elsewhere in the GTA over the past few days, massive anti-Israel celebrations with people flying Palestinian flags and honking their horns cheered the slaughter. Slaughter, right? They keep using this word, slaughter. It's such a graphic word to use. Like, it's straight out of like Doom or like a video game like Diablo or something, where it's just like the slaughter, right? Like, it has that kind of like, it evokes a kind of like crazed lunacy, as if what the Palestinians have done is not the most straightforward, rational thing. Right? It's yeah, exactly. Their slaughter, our anti-terrorism. Exactly. Premier Doug Ford tweeted, "The hate rallies celebrating the kidnapping and slaughtering of innocent Israeli people by terrorists are reprehensible and disgusting. They have no place in Ontario. Now more than ever, we stand with Israel and affirm its right to defend itself and its people." So straight up, Doug Ford, Nazi collaborator, right? Like, straight up. Like, just a Nazi collaborator. You're seeing it right in front of you. Here we go. Mayor Olivia Chow tweeted a similar sentiment. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned the glorification of violence. How dare they fight back? Canadians, Ontario... I mean, for us, it's just a strict investment, right? For us, it's all just dollars and cents. That from the West's perspective, this is not about defending a moral position. This is about defending an investment. That Israel is an investment to us. And what is an investment in? It's an investment in a gigantic military base that we use to get into the Middle East to steal as much resources as we possibly can, right? Middle East and Africa. It is a project of colonialism, is what it is. And it is how we begin our influence in that part of the world, is by having Israel there. And so for us, it is not about creating a moral position and defending that moral position. It's about the money. It's about defending our finance. It's about defending our money. Describing it like it's some pogrom in Nazi-occupied Ukraine. Canadians, Ontarians, and Torontonians who have lived in Canada their entire lives or who have arrived as the children of immigrants or immigrants themselves are cheering on the sadistic slaughter of Jews. This word, slaughter, over and over and over again. Slaughter, 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 right? Like actively dehumanizing the people who are doing it. That they are butchers, right? That's what they're doing. That they're treating them like they're Jason Voorhees. That they're putting them in this place of they're just mindless monsters. Slaughter, 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 over and over and over again with this word. They are not hiding their faces or doing it anonymously. They are proudly proclaiming with whom they stand. It's the audacity. The audacity that people celebrate the Rebel Alliance as they try to destroy the Death Star, right? The audacity. Canadians, on Saturday, over 1,000 Israeli Jews were executed at point-blank range, shot, stabbed, or throat slit. Their slaughter. Dude, we need a drinking game at this point, right? We'd be 4 shots in right now. Slaughter. And this line right here is straight out of the New York Times article that we just read, right? That's why I wanted to read the New York Times article, because I knew it was going to go down like this. That people are just lifting it out. Like they got an AI to write this, and the AI went through Brett Stevens' Nazi article, and we're just like, yeah, that's good. That's a good line. Over 150 Jewish soldiers, men, women, infirm senior citizens, caregivers, toddlers, and babies were kidnapped. The babies thing, of course. Taken hostage by terrorists into Gaza. Their kidnapping is being celebrated. 260 young Israelis were massacred. The next best word, right? If not slaughter, massacred. And mowed down by bullets while attending a music festival. Their murder is being celebrated. Teenagers and young women were raped. We've retracted that allegation, so this is just bullshit. Their despair is being celebrated. Parents, children, like on and on and on and on and on it goes. Because, as we have already affirmed, history begins on Saturday, right? History begins on Saturday. No one is actually... the face of the conflict and the nature of the enemy is laid bare. The brutality is being celebrated in Toronto. For shame. No mention at all. Zero mention whatsoever about the history of this conflict. Wild. 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 Like this is like... If this does not radicalize you against your nation, I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take. If you are actually going to tell me that it makes total sense that the entire media apparatus, the entire political apparatus, that everyone involved at the highest levels of the strata of our society that is organizing our society is in lockstep ignoring the genocide that it has been actively funding the moment its victims fight back. Like, I don't know what you're doing with yourself. Like, I don't know what you're doing with yourself. How can you possibly exist in the world? Like, I can understand having no opinion, right? If your opinion is nothing, okay, like, fine. Right? You're one of these people who are just existing in the world and you're going on in your merry life, and that's great. But if you're here, certainly, if you're listening to me, certainly, you're politically active. You're interested in politics. You want to be connected to this kind of thing. And if your position is anything other than the victims of a genocide fought back against the genocide, Like, I don't know where you're at. Like, it's so childishly obvious. You can't explain this stuff by stupidity alone. It has to be more nefarious. Right. So let's put it through the theory. Let's put it through the theory, right? Which is the unholy trinity of the capitalist death cult, right? The worship of money. So Israel is an investment. That's all it is, right? It is a way for billionaires and for colonizers to get into this region so that they can use it as a lily pad in order to extract wealth from Africa and from the Middle East, right? So the worship of money completely checks out. That it makes sense that we should be able to destroy Libya. This is how they destroy Libya, by the way. Israel to Libya, right? How do they get into Iraq, effectively? Israel to Iraq. How do they get into Afghanistan? Same fucking story, right? You get some coming up through the Persian Gulf, obviously. Like Sudan. Its attacks currently in Ethiopia, right? Everything originates in Israel. Israel is the central operating system for the military apparatus in this region. It's how NATO gets all of its shit into this region. It is the opening operations for everything. It is extremely strategically important. It allows them to get around the Horn of Africa. It allows them to get through this corridor, get into the the East China Sea, the South China Sea, right? While launching from this direction as well, right? It is extremely strategically important. You also see it's like dead center, right? Like if this is the field of operation, like it's almost dead center to the whole thing. So in terms of the money, strictly the money, this is an extremely important place. It's how you extract as much wealth as possible and get it back to the homeland, right? Worship of the self, right? Well, it's good for me, right? We get all the money. We get to extract all of the wealth. We get all of this. It's good for me. And then finally, the worship of the patriarchy. Well, daddy says so, right? Daddy says so, so it's good. And that's it. Like, you can say that it's stupid to do so, and it is desperately stupid to do so, right? In the same way that it's stupid for a child to think that of their own father. But it has a much deeper connection, right? It isn't actually someone just being stupid. It's them defending their bloodline and believing that the person who generated them, right, is without fault. That daddy said so. Oh, the New York Times said so. The New York Times said that history started on Saturday, and so history started on Saturday. And anybody who's going to stand up and say that history did not start on Saturday is a terrorist, right? Why? Because daddy said so. That it benefits them to think this way. Why? Because they're extracting as much wealth as possible, so it's enriching them. So it's good for them, it's good for their money, and it's good for their daddy, right? And so it continues, and it will continue. Israeli official calls for doomsday nuclear missile option. You read that correctly, everyone. You read that correctly. From Newsweek. An Israeli lawmaker is calling for her nation's military to use nuclear warfare in response to attacks by Hamas. Revital Tali Gottlieb, an Israeli lawyer and member of the Knesset for the Likud, published multiple posts advocating for a forceful retaliation following a surprise attack on Gaza on Saturday at the hands of militant Palestinian group designated as a terrorist organization by the United States. More than 1,600 combined Israelis and Palestinians have reportedly been killed since Hamas launched attacks, according to the Associated Press, and hundreds of others have been injured. Hamas has reportedly taken an unknown number of hostages as the conflict has escalated. Jericho missile, strategic alert. Before considering the introduction of forces, doomsday weapon. This is my opinion. May God preserve all our strength, Gottlieb wrote on X, formerly Twitter, on Monday, according to a translation. Another post says, I urge you to do everything and use doomsday weapons fearlessly against our enemies, adding that Israel must use everything in its arsenal. These are the good guys, by the way. These are the guys that were supposed to be like, rah, rah, yeah, doomsday weapons. Literally the words doomsday weapons are coming out of these people's mouths. And it's like, are we the baddies? On Tuesday, she continued with her calls of urgency. Only an explosion that shakes the Middle East will restore this country's dignity, strength, and security, Gottlieb posted. It's time to kiss doomsday, shooting powerful missiles without limit, not flattening a neighborhood, crushing and flattening Gaza without mercy. Without mercy. We're the good guys. No mercy, good guys. She also stressed a swift response from her own government in response to Hamas laughing at the country. Nikolai Sokov, former fellow at the Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation, told Newsweek via email that loose talk regarding nuclear weapons has become prevalent and more commonplace in recent years due to the war in Ukraine and now the escalation in Gaza. Part of it is understandable, he said, due to serious security crises, a lack of knowledge about nuclear weapons, visible political positions, and more people generally pondering the use of such weapons and the effect on a global scale. For Israel, such loose talk is perhaps even more damaging because the country does not even admit it has nuclear weapons. So an indirect confirmation is not good for its image, Sakov said. like, fucking brutal, eh? Like, this is just getting to be just absolutely psychotic. Like, beyond psychotic, right? Baked potato, good to see you. Juan, methane, good to see you. Like, yeah. Like, it is more nefarious, methane. I actually had, like, this brainwave yesterday. It's not stupidity. That it's sort of like stupidity. But stupidity was never accurate. And that's kind of why I moved away from it. Because it's worse than that. It's this childish belief that daddy is correct. It's the worship of the patriarchy. And I need to continue doing more research so I can sharpen that blade and sharpen that point. But I do think it is actually accurate. That it is akin to a child looking at their father saying and believing that father can do no wrong. And that eventually, as one develops and grows, they realize that their father is certainly capable of doing wrong. But that lots of people in the society never actually get to that point of belief in their society. That they are worshiping the patriarchy. They are worshiping the idea of that their fathers are gods, essentially. And that makes them look very stupid in the way that it is stupid for a child to believe that of their own father. But at the same time, one expects it of children, right? Nobody would actually condemn a child for this kind of stupidity. That there's a kind of there's a form of innocence to it, a naivete, a just pushing all your chips in on this idea that the person who gave birth to me, that the person who is my generator, right, who I share DNA with, who I am spawned in with, right, must be good, right? It can't possibly be that they are the bad guys. And the truth is that they are. They are the bad guys. Objectively. Like, objectively the bad guys. Blood for the blood god, yeah? Yeah, Israel really is just a massive U.S. military base pretending to be a country, overtly doing everything the U.S. wishes it could do, yeah? It's the atrocity propaganda playbook to manufacture consent for conflict and war as usual. The U.S. is the biggest arms and dealer by far and need to move on to their next racket. Well, and I've already showed this, but it's worth showing again. It's working, right? Like all of the weapons manufacturers, look, their profits have gone up. Huge amounts. Triple, quadruple. Profits through the roof. All we had to do was indiscriminately bomb with white phosphorus the Gazans, right? Thanks for the laugh, Monsieur. I appreciate that, my man. Baked Potato says, worship of infantilism, maybe. But I think it gets captured with the patriarchy. And I think that there's a lot of theory about this. And it's theory that I'm going to investigate. Because I think that there's something to this. That it's like, it's daddy worship. It really is. It's what the defenders of Jordan Peterson, who has now outed himself as a completely dyed-in-the-wool Nazi, it's what the followers of Jordan Peterson are doing. That they have this daddy issue. That they have venerated Jordan Peterson as their daddy. He's their surrogate dad, right? And they defend him as such. That any critique against him is just ignored. It doesn't matter how aggressive and ridiculous he is, right? He can show like literal cock milking porn, and people are just like, he had a good reason for it. It's ridiculous. Is stupid the only word in your vocabulary? Makes you sound like an unserious person. Yeah, Larry, that is actually a fair criticism, and it is why I have moved away from the worship of stupidity point and tried to find another way to articulate this. And I think that I have done it. That it's the worship of money, it's the worship of the self, and it's the worship of the patriarchy. That those 3 points are what is making the decline of Western civilization actually occur. And I wanted to get away from the worship of stupidity point specifically because of this criticism. Because this criticism, I think, it's what people want to drag the conversation into, and I know it. So I think it's a fair thing to say, Larry. And I'm pretty happy with how this is going now. So, and I hope it develops in a really nice way. We'll see as time moves forward. That I think it's worth discussing stupidity. It's worth discussing illiteracy and ignorance and all of that kind of stuff. It's worth discussing, but that those are actions that are in a larger structure. Right? That someone is acting stupidly or unseriously for a good reason. And that reason is because they want to protect their father. Ernalda on Twitch says capitalism with a K. Correct. You're in the right way, man. You missed 2 Ks. You forgot the 2 other Ks. Midnight Rose writes, there's a great book called Atrocity Fabrication and Its Consequences, and I think everyone should check it out. This is nothing new. Yeah, absolutely. Ziandu, good to see you, my man. Hi, I think the child-parent link is the wrong power dynamic. I think too many people are hurt by power and think they can fix it by becoming powerful, often willingly harmful. But I don't think that that's much different than a child that gets abused by their own parent, right? Like, I think that that's pretty similar. And that's a fairly common thing that does happen. So I don't know that I actually agree with your point. Like, there is this belief that exists in the society that we are right because we are right. Like, we are right because we say so. And that is a belief in the sacredness of the structure itself and of this sort of this patriarchal structure. Ernalda says, it's the worship of money that has led the U.S. to this much divide. Yeah, absolutely. That to me is a major, major part of it. That's sort of the apex of everything, if you ask me. That the profit motive, The profit motive has created just this absolutely absurd, the profit motive as a religious belief, that it is okay to sacrifice literally everything in pursuit of profit, and that profit is the natural good. Like, for goodness sakes, throughout the 90s and the 2000s, they were literally saying that. They were literally saying that the pursuit of profit will organize the society in the best possible way, and that it won't possibly lead to the destruction of civilizations. It won't possibly lead to the destruction of our water and our air and our land, right? It won't possibly do any of that. Jim Moneymaker writes, I think I can understand why normies do feel concerned about an attack like this. I think that's a fair thing to actually bring up, Jim, because, like, if you are just a person, right? If you're just a person living in the world and you don't know what's going on, right? You've never seen this map before in your life, right? You've never seen anything like this. You've keyed into world politics probably because of the Ukrainian crisis. Maybe you're a young person. Maybe you're 18 years old, right? You're just sort of getting figured out and you're just kind of coming into the world and being like, what's going on? Oh my God, right? And you have a media apparatus that is as fraudulent as this, that is absolutely refusing to inform you of basic history, right? If you're one of these people, if you're a quote-unquote normie, I can understand why you would go along with what the system is saying, right? You can just go along with what is happening. And it ties in a little bit to what I'm talking about, the worship of patriarchy, that is we trust those who came before us when we absolutely should not. We absolutely should not. We should not be trusting what these people say. We should not be trusting what our fathers are telling us. We should not be trusting this because these people are genocidal maniacs, right? Who have been committing a genocide in that region for a long time. So while I understand that it makes sense that like a normal citizen and a normal person would be pro-Israel because their entire system is telling them so, right? The entire structure of the system is telling them so, and is condemning Hamas and is calling this an atrocity and is doing all this kind of stuff, and that they want to be in the in group, right? You see such a huge amount of energy going towards Hamas bad, Hamas bad, Hamas bad, and it's very small organizations and small groups and fringe individuals who are actually pointing out the overt, obvious, complete truth of it. That the emperor has no clothes. Here it is, right? Here it is. The emperor is naked, very, very plainly. History did not start on Saturday, right? And there's a long kind of point to this. And so while I can be sympathetic, right? I can be sympathetic to people who find themselves in this kind of position. There's a point where once you are confronted with the evidence of the situation, you've got to turn that corner, or you've got to decide to go along willingly, right? That there is such a thing as deciding to be evil, and people can make that decision and do regularly, that they know what they're doing and they decide to do it anyway. Like honoring a Nazi in Parliament, right? You know you're honoring a Nazi in Parliament, you do it anyway. Jim writes, I have seen some anti-Zionists still criticize the attack nonetheless due to it involving Israelis and not just IDF soldiers, but I do understand the argument about colonialism. What people are trying to do there, Jim, and this is my position, and I acknowledge that it is on the extreme side of the spectrum, but I don't mind that at all, is they're trying to create the case that there is such a thing as an innocent Nazi. Right, that Zionism is a form of Nazism, right? It's Albert Einstein. I agree with Albert Einstein when he said so, that it is a form of Nazism, and that there is such a thing as an innocent Nazi. Too bad. No, there isn't. Right? Just nope. Too tough. Baked Potato writes, the people in power will never give it up unless a revolution is waged against them, especially in the West. Everything they say is backwards. Human rights and justice equal genocide. Yeah. Call it what it is, John. What they do is called whitewashing. Yeah. Like, think about how cocky it is to have a music festival within striking distance of the genocide that you are waging. Right over there, on the other side of a wall that you can see, is an open-air prison that your society is actively creating a genocide in, very obviously and very clearly, that your government supports and that your people support, and that you know that is what you are doing, and you're having a music festival within distance of sight of that wall. Seems to me like they got what was coming to them. Because there's no such thing as an innocent Zionist. There's no such thing as an innocent Nazi. Does not exist. It's an argument that people are trying to manufacture in order to garner sympathy for Nazis. And I won't have it. Full stop. I understand why people want to do it. I do not. There is no such thing as an innocent Nazi. It's just not every Israeli even. Recent immigrants are Zionists per se. Look, if you're going to stand with Zionists, like, oh, but there were recent immigrants to Germany. Not all Germans are Nazis. They just elect and support and invade and do the salute and like, there's no such thing as an innocent Nazi. Like, too bad. Tough shit. You threw your lot in. Right? You fucked around, you found out. Like, if you're not going to stand up against this idea, like, trying to be neutral during a period of crisis is siding with the oppressor. Full stop. That if you walk into a room and someone is beating the shit out of someone, and your position is to stand by and watch, then you're siding with the person who's beating the shit out of the other person. And if that person who is getting the shit beat out of them pushed off the guy that was beating the shit out of him and then ran over to you and grabbed you and tried to use you as a shield to protect himself from the guy beating the shit out of them, right? You could at least say, yeah, it makes sense. It sucks for that guy, right, who is just standing by watching the guy get beat up. But the person who is getting beat up does not view the person standing by as an ally. And so, tough shit, too bad. Right? Too fucking bad. Stand up, call it for what it is, speak out against genocide, fight back, and if you're immigrating to a country that is actively committing a genocide against people, and then you go to a music festival within sight of the genocide, but don't Zionists make the same argument about all Muslims being terrorists? Yeah, why are you listening to Zionists? Who gives a fuck what Zionists say? Sorry, like, oh, the Nazis have a point. Who gives a fuck what the Nazis think? Fuck them. What do we think about the logical conclusion that we don't choose our beliefs? We absolutely choose our beliefs. It is true. Like, the clearest example of this is nationalism, right? That nationalism makes sense in a way. There's a type of logic to nationalism that is undeniable, which is that you are born somewhere. You want to believe that the somewhere you were born and the place that you were born in is good. And chances are good that your experience with the people who are around you is good, that those people probably treat you decently because you were born in that group and you are of that group. And so your perspective of your group or your nation or your religious belief is good because you were born within it, right? And that's pretty natural, right? But if you want to develop and grow in a serious way, you'll come to understand that the only reason you think so is because you were born there. It's like being born, it's like starting a video game and believing that the tutorial area is the best part of the game, right? And it makes a type of sense why you would think so, but if you leave the tutorial area and you actually take a look at what's going on and you actually go about and all of this kind of stuff, and then you come back to the tutorial area, you see pretty clearly that the tutorial area is like small and probably not the encapsulation of all thought. So the idea that you don't, quote unquote, choose your beliefs, like you don't choose where you start, that's true. You don't choose where you start, but you do choose to stop developing. You do choose to stop learning. You do choose to stop figuring things out. You do make that choice. And there's a good reason why people do it. Straight up. Ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss. That if you are ignorant, you are happier. And I've met people who are exactly like this, and I got to tell you, it's hard to be mad at them. It's hard to be mad at them. It's when you encounter these people, they don't know anything. If you start talking to them about something, they shut it down and they don't want to hear about it, right? And then they'll talk to you about banal, normal, everyday things and observations about what's going on in their life around them, and they seem perfectly happy, and moreover, they are actually lovely people to be around and to spend time with. That my general opinion has become, when you encounter these people who have decided clearly to stop developing, to live this life at that level and to stay at that level, my best advice is to just let them and enjoy the time you have with them and live with them in that kind of space and on that kind of bandwidth. It's actually quite refreshing. There's something quite lovely about it, right? Once you sort of release the expectation that they should develop and they should learn more and they should do all that kind of stuff. Because there's a type of respectability to it. Like, that type of person would never stand up and tell me that Hamas is evil, right? Because that would mean that they would be taking a position, right? That would mean that they would be learning something and knowing something, right? And they don't. That they're here. They're living here. They're not going to get up in that kind of area. And you tell them something about what's going on, and they just go like, "Oh wow, goodness me. Oh well, I'm sure they'll all sort that out." Oof. Ignorance is bliss. So there's a good reason why people do it. But if you're going to come to those who are actually learning and who are actually developing and who are actually figuring things out and who are actually trying to discover what's going on in the world and tell them how things are, yeah, you're going to get you should get pushed back on. And that's when you have made the choice, right? When you start to tell other people, when you start to proselytize about your belief system, that's when you are making a choice. And that is when you are opening yourself up to criticism, and that's when you're opening yourself to being pushed back on. And if you are not willing to accept evidence, if you're not willing to accept evidence in your decision-making system and your decision-making pattern, then you're just a little boy. You're just a little girl. You're just a child. You're just believing in your starting location. You're believing in the patriarchy. You're believing in the system of capital just because you were born there and you were told so, right? So I don't believe in the idea that you choose your beliefs, but I definitely believe in the idea, I don't believe in the idea that you don't choose your beliefs, but I definitely believe in the idea that you are born in a specific place, and so you're presented with certain ideas first, but that you should get to, and that a person should get to, a deep, deep skepticism a lot faster. In the same way that you eventually do become skeptical of your father, right? That the true difference between a child and an adult is that a child believes their parents are supermen or supernatural beings of some kind, right? That if you are sitting there, and it goes both ways, whether they're superheroes or villains, right? You are still a child if you think this way about your parents. That if you are on the other side of it and you recognize that your parents are just scared monkeys and they always were, and they're just trying their best, right? Just like you are, right? As soon as you make that recognition, as soon as you get to that point and you understand that about your parents, you are an adult. And whether that happens when you're 12 or whether that happens when you're 55, right? To me, that's the distinguishing factor. That's the distinguishing line. And I feel that way as well about your society. And if you can get there with your parents, you can get there with your society, where you just come to recognize that, like, oh yeah, this is just where I started. Like, this is just where the system, where the universal system spawned me. That I'm just here, right? And that these people are not good. They're just trying their best. And these ideas are not good. They're just what they have. And they're just trying their best, right? And why do they have these ideas? Because their parents had these ideas. And why did they have those ideas? Because their parents had those ideas, right? And that we're sharpening them and all. And it's unlikely that we're going to do away with those ideas entirely, but we can sharpen them and we can move them and we can address them. We can talk about them, right? And so you certainly don't choose your starting location, right? Cottonmouth says Hamas is feeling the mailed fist of his Israeli military might. Yeah, Israel is certainly doing war crimes now. Just white phosphorus. That's absolutely true. Just straight up just mass genocide at this point, which they've always been doing, so it's just indiscriminate now and open. Ronaldo wants to have the big conversation, dude. And you know what? I'm ready for it. We're almost at the 8 o'clock hour. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Hit the bells, hit the whistles. Do all the things, right? Send some money my way if you've got it. More importantly than that, though, let people know I exist. Let people know I exist, without a doubt. Let people know I exist. Ronaldo writes, there has been no scientific evidence that there is a God, right? Yet billions of people have different beliefs in gods without evidence. I think, Ernalda, this is interesting. This is what I have come to call the great misunderstanding. That there has been in the modern era, especially amongst the modern scientific community, a great misunderstanding about what is meant about the word or the concept of God. And I think that it's understandable. It is understandable because the theological community itself has also fallen into this great misunderstanding. That most of the theological systems, so you think about here in the West, right? The Christian fundamentalist right has essentially taken over. And these people are lunatics, right? They believe that God is a man in the sky, right? That it's pretty clear by the way they talk. And that the critique or the parody that gets made of this man in the sky image is the giant spaghetti monster, or the idea of a teacup floating around Mars, like these sorts of things. So that there's no evidence that there is a giant man in the sky, right? And that's more or less what the scientific, like the New Atheist movement, for example, the scientific community, as well as the theists, are actually regarding when they're talking about God. But if you actually do the investigation, like I highly suggest that people look at the theological works of Isaac Newton. That Isaac Newton was a theist. He believed in God as a concept. And he was not talking about God as a man in the sky. Right? That when we talk about this, and for clarity, for total clarity, I regard myself as a theist. Okay? I do. But I call myself a secular theist. Just to be frustrating. Here is my argument. Okay? Here's my whole argument. Thank you, Ronaldo. Yes, you're right to laugh, and I appreciate that you did. So, that is frustrating. Good. I'm glad that we're on this. I feel it. I feel that we're on a wavelength with one another, Ernalda. This is my favorite subject to talk about. I don't talk about it as often as I do politics, but I talk about this a lot. So here's the whole argument, Ernalda. You and I are in a system of energy, right? Quantum energy. We were spawned by it. There's been a Big Bang moment, and that the system of energy that exists around us and supports us and continuously creates us. right? Continuously creates this. Just to say one thing quickly here with bread cultists, no evidence against God either. Evidence must be put forward by the people making the claim. And without a doubt, the people who are saying there is a God are the people making the claim. So if somebody says there is no God, they are not obliged to provide evidence, right? Because claims provided without evidence can be rejected without evidence. And that is absolutely true. So here's my claim, that we exist in this system of energy, and my question isn't, is there a God, right? Because that I think leads you to there's a man in the sky. And you can create this great misunderstanding, which I think is where the whole conversation has come to. This great misunderstanding. That rather the question is the universe, or reality itself if you prefer, is the universe itself alive? Does the universe have its own consciousness? And once you ask this question, does the universe itself have a consciousness? Or is reality itself conscious? Then you can start getting into more serious and more interesting questions about this concept that theology has called God for a long, long time. That you omit from the conversation completely this concept of a man in the sky or Zeus or any of this kind of stuff, that it just fades out of the conversation completely. And you can start having a serious conversation about the nature of reality and the nature of our existences together and collectively. That we exist. Are you not creating your own concept? I don't think so. I think that we're just trying to discern what reality actually is, right? We don't know what reality is, right? And hey, Eric, how you doing, bud? I'll get to you in a moment, okay, my man? Good to see you, my man. That I think fundamentally what you're asking is, why is this important? Would that be fair to say? That you're trying to say, like, okay, who cares? No, I love talking about this, Ronaldo. I actually think that this is, like, we are currently talking about the foundation of my belief system. That most things that I talk about spawn from this point. And I believe very strongly in having the linchpin of my belief systems challenged. That if you can't actually challenge your linchpin, if you can't actually challenge the linchpin of your belief systems, you end up with this shit. Right? You end up with this garbage where people just deny the existence of this, right? So please do. I've been seeking this, seeking these types of challenges my entire life. I used to be a fundamentalist Christian, and I'm here now. I went through a very brief period of atheism, and it collapsed because of this, which is that why is it important to acknowledge that the universe may be sentient by itself, right? That's fine, Arnaldo. That doesn't matter. You seem to be very kind, and I'm fine with that. And if the universe has its own consciousness, if it has its own awareness, then we are obliged to consider that as we move around in the world. Would we be so willing to drill holes in the earth and tear this earth apart and burn sections of it and destroy it and rip it apart if we had an understanding that the earth and the universe we were in had its own consciousness? Then you would come to see very quickly that would be akin to a red blood cell tearing apart the vein that it is in for whatever benefit that it sees that it has. And the consequences of that could be dire, could be fundamentally dire. Now, what evidence do I have? Right? Yes, but has it been established that the universe has a consciousness? What evidence do I have? Right? I'm reading your mind, Arnaldo. I'm reading your mind. So you and I are conscious, right? I have a consciousness. At least we claim to have consciousness. We don't really understand what consciousness is. We don't really understand, and we understand that we are having these discussions through a limited language, right? But when we say, I have a conscious, or I have consciousness, we tend to understand what that means. That we do understand that we have a consciousness. And moreover, there is such a thing as a collective consciousness. Funnily enough, the CIA did huge studies on the idea of a collective consciousness. That if a group of humans get into a room and meditate on something, it has an observable and measurable impact. And so there is such a thing as a collective consciousness. Well, if you are part of the universe and I am part of the universe and we are collectively part of the universe, then that means by definition, the universe is at least as conscious as you are. By definition. It can't not be. It must be the case. Because the universe is you and you are of the universe. You are the same energy. You are the same thing. That you came from that energy, and when you die, you return to that energy. And so the consciousness that you are experiencing is, in fact, the consciousness of the universe. And that's true of you, it's true of me, it's true of Eric, Mikhail, Methane, it's true of Mopper, it's true of all of us, and it's true of all of us collectively. And so it is no leap in logic whatsoever to say that the universe is as conscious as every living being that exists within it. Now you're getting into some questions. How do we measure consciousness? I highly advise, it's not teaspoons of consciousness. There isn't. So, for example, the CIA analyzed if a group of 1,000 people come together and meditate in an area for I forget what time frame it was. But if you meditate in an area for a period of time, it has a discernible impact on the level of crime in that area. That it reduces crime in an area together. This is the CIA report. Maybe I should find that. I'll find it again and put it up later. But and that people can affect each other's mental and emotional states simply by being in the presence with one another. Actors and artists, people who are theatrical practitioners, understand the idea of collective consciousness very, very tightly, very, very easily. Right? I myself am a performer, and I have done performance, and I've gone up on stage, and the concept of a collective consciousness is 100% true. The reason why there is such a thing as stage fright is because if you are the center of attention, you understand that you are the center of that consciousness, and that consciousness is flowing through you, and that the stakes of your existence are much higher for it, and that there is this collective consciousness that exists. And so mass hysteria is true too, mass hallucinations. Yes, now you're getting into it, right? That these sorts of collective psychic experiences are real, and that they come together. And if they are real for us, then they are real by definition for the universe itself. And what this means, right? Why is it important? Beyond just a sense of survival, just beyond I don't want to dig a hole in here because I might blow up the universe. But what it means is that it means that each and every one of us are literally equals. Not equals in terms of capability, which is a conservative talking point in order to purposefully misunderstand the point. But literally equals in terms of our validity. That the universe has seen to it to create you. That you exist in the universe, and I exist in the universe, and LeBron James exists, and Jordan exists, and all of these other great athletes and great people exist, and we are all equally valid, and our experiences are equally valid. Each of us are born, we have a set of experiences, and then we die, and that is completely, and each one of those is completely valid. Each one is in and of itself a note in a great musical score. And when that note is played, it plays loudly and it is true. And if it did not exist, then the score could not go on. That there are no small parts, just small players. And once you accept that, once you accept that you are part of the universe and I am part of the universe, then you understand fully that when I talk to you and when you talk to me, we are both universal beings of quantum energy talking to one another as equals, and the experience we have together is equally valid. That you and I are literally and factually the universe talking to itself, trying to discuss and trying to discern what is going on. That you are much more important than you think you are. That you are the eyes and the ears and the mouthpiece of the universe itself. And what you see and what you hear and what you think and what you say is the universe trying to see itself and trying to discern what it is. We have been imbued with this enormous gift, with this enormous capacity, and with this enormous capability, and this enormous responsibility, this enormous task for us to embark upon, which is to discover what the universe is. And we're building this moronic system of capital that says you gotta work for slavers in order to have food and shelter. It's idiotic. It's unbefitting. It's unbefitting. Okay, you said quantum energy. I really want to know what that is. I think that you should read some quantum theory. That's all. I use the word quantum energy as a way to sort of try to get the more, how we're trying to destroy the Earth as we speak. Yeah, we're not going to destroy the Earth. The Earth is much more powerful than we are. By a lot. By a lot. Like, it pays to remember that the Earth created us, right? It pays to remember that the Earth created us, that we did not create the Earth, that the Earth created us. It created a garden for us to be in, that we did not do anything in order to be here, that the Earth created us. And when it's our time to be punished for our iniquity, we will be. And the Earth will put us back in our place, and then the Earth will heal itself, because the Earth is perfectly capable of doing that. That we don't need to invent anything, and we don't need to do anything. We don't need to create anything. We don't need to sell anything. We don't need carbon capture devices. We don't need to do any of that, right? We just need to stop what we're doing and let the Earth take over, because the Earth created us in the first place and created the garden for us to be in the first place. It knows exactly what to do. We don't need to help it. It's much more powerful than we are. Obviously so. Obviously so. And anyone that's going to stand in front of me and try to pretend as though humanity is a more powerful force than the Earth itself is joking themselves. Just completely joking. I want to address you, Cottonmouth. Cottonmouth writes, communism is a failure, except it succeeded every single time it was tried. Wealthy countries are all capitalist. Yes, so train robbers are rich. What's your point? That doesn't justify train robbery, right? Like, if what capitalists do is they go into defenseless nations, enslave the population, commit a genocide, force the slaves to extract wealth, and then send that wealth back to the motherland. Of course they're wealthy. Does that mean that this is how we should organize our society? Is this how we should organize a global civilization? Is this how we should be? Constantly going into regions that are defenseless, enslaving the local population, and using those slaves to dig up resources for us to use back in the motherland? Because that's what capitalism actually is. Like, that's what capitalism actually is. Communism has only succeeded in mass death and poverty. It's good at that. If you are saying those sorts of things, Cottonmouth, then I can safely say that you don't know what communism is. And chances are good that you are illiterate on the subject. And I can say that safely, because all it takes is a cursory analysis of the USSR, of China, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Cuba, Venezuela. It takes like a cursory analysis of these places to realize very quickly that that communism has been a success for these countries. The world gave communism a shot after World War II, and they kicked that shit to the curb. No. Like, I mean, China exists. Like, again, I think your illiteracy is showing pretty clearly, my man. Like, the Soviet Union was a massive success across the board. They took a literal feudal society run by Tsars, kings, and in the space of a generation, they created the largest economy in the world. They were the first people into space. They defeated the Nazis, the largest capitalist army ever fielded at the time. Like, defeating the Nazis, first people into space, creating the world economic superpower in the space of a single generation are massive, enormous, unequivocal successes. And to pretend like those things did not happen is to admit that you are illiterate or purposefully dumb. And that's just the hard truth. If you love communism, move to North Korea. So this is quasi-genocidal, what you're saying, right? The forced relocation of political opponents is a form of genocide, so you should know that that's what you're advocating for. Also, there's lots of good reasons why you know that can't happen. And really all you're revealing when you say that kind of thing is how dumb you are, right? Like, I hate to put it that sharply, but that's really what it is. You can think of good reasons why I can't move to North Korea. Right? There are plenty of good reasons why that can't happen. I can't get a permission for visa. I don't speak the local language. I don't have any friends or family there. I don't have a job there. Right? Moreover, and this is the one that I actually believe in. This is the one that I actually espouse most readily. I am not interested in betraying my own friends and family and abandoning them at their highest point of need. That I espouse what I espouse because I believe that our society can actually improve, and that we can actually learn lessons, and we can actually figure things out, and we can actually grow and become adults and learn how to exist peacefully in the world. That we can do it. And I'm not going to abandon my society in its time of most desperate need for personal gain. That's something a capitalist would do. No, thank you. As Ernaldo writes, communism has been misused by all countries that has implemented. So to understand communism, you need to read about it, not just believe in propaganda. Yep. Well, and there's also levels of complexity. Like, Cuba is a good example, right? Cuba is a poor country, but I would still argue that communism has been largely successful there. That the poverty that exists in Cuba exists because of the sanctions that have been placed upon it by the Americans, by the capitalist death cult. But the Cubans themselves are actually quite pleased with communism, because communism has created an equitable state where people have access to health care. People don't need to sell themselves into prostitution. Right? There aren't beggars on the street. That everyone is subsisting on sort of the same level. And if we actually wanted to see them flourish, the thing that we should do is get that destroyer off the coast, controlled by the Americans, out of there. Let them trade on the world stage, right? Let them trade on the world stage. No, see, Cottonmouth, you just don't know anything, right? So you don't understand that communism was successful, that it has been successful, that it is working. It's not that it failed and they just needed to do it differently. It's that it actually has succeeded and it is being successful. You just don't know anything, and so you refuse to acknowledge it, right? Like, all you know is that your daddy said it failed, right? You're just worshiping the patriarchy. You're just worshiping your dad, right? And you don't know anything about the subject. And you're in here trying to convince people who know more than you do by a lot that it failed, when in fact it's working, and it has worked, and it's continuing to work for billions of people. And to pretend like it's not is to just live in a delusional state. All right, moving on from that. Yeah, I think you're right, Ligadizzy, another 15-year-old gamer. That's fine. We got to have these conversations. Eric, I promised you. So let's get back to you, my man. Eric. Oh, Eric, you're like stream of consciousness. Good evening. Now that I'm caught up. 3. John, what kind of curse did you receive where you trim your beard because you lost your hair in the process? Thank you, Eric. I don't know. I think it makes me look like Kratos. I feel like I've got power. Like if I just stood here and was just like, people would be like, don't mess with that guy. He's got something going on. When the Hamas-Israel war started, we ceased to hear anything about Ukraine. I wonder why that is. Yeah, just an excuse for them to steadily step out. Yeah, Zelensky is doing everything he can to remind people of it. Right? He knows what's happening. He knows that our attention is going over to Hamas now, and so that's where the money is going to start to flow now. And he knows the money's not going to come to Ukraine anymore. He knows that that's going to happen. And then very shortly thereafter, America will withdraw its support quietly. No one will report on it, right? There'll be zero reporting on it in the Western press, and no one will remember. Americans are really good at forgetting things. Did you see the conservative poll I posted about the Ukraine-Hamas war in the Discord? Where, my man? Where? Probably. Is it in the memes? Oh, is this the one? Should America get involved in the Israel-Hamas conflict? Yes, militarily, 24%. Yes, but only financially, 9%. No, 68%. Well, that's good. That's good to know. I mean, 30% of them are psychos, but that's okay. Oh, Eric wants to push back for Jordan Peterson being a Nazi. How can he be? He's a Canadian. It's not like we have a Nazi scandal. Good pushback, Eric. You're right. Jordan Peterson is a Canadian, and we haven't had any Nazi scandals recently. Right? There hasn't been a very recent, within the last month, Nazi scandal. Absolutely. Jack writes on Twitch, Ukrainian authorities are planning to turn the Chernobyl exclusion zone into an amusement park. They say the only difference between it and Disneyland will be the 6-foot-tall mouse isn't a costume. Jack, if you think Russia might have something to do with the Israel-Hamas conflict, I'm going to need a source for that. Like, I don't really like to engage in conspiracy. Like, I'll engage in conspiracy to a degree, but at the end of the day, I need a document. I need an official. I need something serious. So, I'm not saying that they're not, but I am saying I'll need to see something a little bit firmer. But you are right. It is to Russia's benefit. You're not wrong about that. There's also big question marks about where did those rockets come from, right? Gaza fired something like 500 rockets, right? Like where are they getting this hardware from, right? Where is it coming from? And given that Russia has been the antagonist of the United States, like they fought the United States in the proxy war in Syria, they're fighting a proxy war in Ukraine, they fought the proxy war in Georgia, right? It makes a type of sense that Russia would be involved in it. That all said, I'm going to need to see firmer documentation. I'm going to need to see something a bit more serious. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying you tell me what to look for, and I will show it on the stream. Because if you've got a document from a Russian official, from even intelligence, even Western intelligence, right, I would like to talk about it. So, interesting idea, my man. Interesting idea. Yeah, Eric, you're right. You're right, dude. My bad. I shouldn't have called Jordan Peterson for being a Nazi when he's explicitly very much a Nazi. You're right. Imagine being a Canadian nationalist. I know, right? They exist. They're definitely there. Things like cultural hegemony definitely still exists. Yeah. What? I like this, Isaac. Good to see you, by the way. Once someone opens their eyes, they cannot sleep in peace again. I mean, I think that's why we do this, isn't it? So that with the hope that we will one day sleep in peace again. But the reality is, Isaac, is that I take solace in the knowledge that I'm going to, at some day, sleep in peace again. That I don't lament the moment of my death. In fact, there's a part of me that's quite looking forward to it, because it means that I get to go home. I get to be embraced once again by the energy that spawned me, and I get to rejoin it and live in peace. Helps me get through the experience. Because we're just visitors here. We're just temporarily here for just a flash in the moment. And it's not as important as you think it is. Oh, Juan, good to see you. People forget the Earth has been hit by everything the universe has thrown at it, including mass extinction. Yeah, of course. The Earth will be just fine. Yep. Like the only thing, like if we'd have to hit the Earth with like a Death Star, we'd literally have to but even then, if you blew the Earth apart, right? Well, the forces of the universe are going to reform the Earth, right? They're going to reform it. It's going to take a long time, but certainly that reformation is going to happen. It happened once. It'll happen again, right? So the idea that we are going to have a permanent impact on something like the Earth is just... We're going to have a permanent impact on the existence of humanity itself. Did I skip through your stuff here, Eric? I wanted to make sure that I hit your stuff because you wrote quite a bit. John, I highly recommend you listen to New Atlas. Brian and his friend Angelo did a conversation about Hamas were able to get those weapons. Okay, interesting. Yeah. I'll for sure look into that because that's something of a looming question mark. I'd like to know more about that. Who's arming Hamas? Hamas is not making these weapons, right? Where are they getting these weapons from? And so there's a couple of things. Yeah, Azif says, Soviets actually did beat the USA to the moon with a probe. This is true. No alternate universe needed. Yeah, it's so funny. Like, the space race was literally like, it was a propaganda system. It was a propaganda game. It was the US basically creating a goalpost and saying that crossing this particular goalpost meant total victory, right? Getting a man on the moon was the giant win and the banner, and nothing else mattered. Didn't matter that the first people into space were the Soviets. Didn't matter that the first people to put life forms into space were the Soviets. Didn't matter that the first people to put life forms into space and get them back down safely were the Soviets. Didn't matter that the first people who actually touched down on the moon were Soviets. None of that mattered, right? And I actually make the argument that it is much more difficult to get into space in the first place. That the achievement of getting into space and sending Sputnik around the Earth and then landing it back down on the Earth is a much more significant achievement than getting a person on the moon. Not to say that getting a person on the moon is not an achievement in and of itself, but the breaking through that first barrier is far, 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 far more impressive, if you ask me. Far more impressive. I'll check that out, Eric. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, my man. They also took the first photo of the dark side of the moon, yeah? Yeah, downplay your enemy's achievements, exaggerate their scandals. Yeah, exactly, right? Like there's and the West has gotten very good at this, right? And they're very flagrant now, right? That the claims of the West are so flagrant and so overwhelming that like, for God's sakes, like to use this thing that is happening right in front of us, the entire narrative surrounding the pro-genocide conversation, of the pro-genocide crowd, is that the genocide doesn't exist. That they don't talk about it, they don't bring it up, they pretend as though the Ghazians are attacking from nowhere, that this is totally peaceful. It's just a completely we're having a peacenik music festival. There's no wider story going on. There's nothing more serious happening, right? History started on Saturday. And as long as you go along with this idea of history started on Saturday, then you can believe what you like. Yeah, we went from Uyghurs to Deus Vult so quickly. Yeah, that's why like I don't take this Uyghur thing seriously at all. Like, these people are committing a genocide. They're wiping Muslims out across the Middle East, but we're supposed to believe that they care about Muslims in China. Get the fuck out of here. It's an embarrassing thing to say. I will say, though, their conversation and what they say, it makes me extremely skeptical. Sure, yeah, hit me with the Cliff's Note, for sure, dude. I just let me know what who's arming these people. Like, give me like a very quick synopsis of who they think are arming these people, because like there's a couple of narratives that make sense. Like, it could be as simple as Saudi Arabia, right? It could really be just like Egypt is just like, yeah, here, right? It could be Russia. Like, I don't think that that's off the table. It could even be China, right? Like, it'd be out of character for China to do that, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. Yeah, rewriting history before it's written, yeah. Yeah, the Soviets were the first to put an animal into outer space becomes the Soviets were the first to kill a dog in outer space, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for goodness sakes, like, think about the... Let's all talk about a lie that we know is a lie, is uncontroversially a lie. That the American Empire convinced all of us was true to create a total atrocity that has ongoing modern day effects, which is the weapons of mass destruction lie. Right? Uncontroversially, a lie that we were bald-facedly told by the Bush administration. We all remember Colin Powell with his little baggie, right? And in the post 9/11 hysteria, we all went along with this overt, obvious, easily falsifiable lie that led to the destruction of Iraq, murdering 1 million people in that region, the fracturing of Iraq. It will never be a country again. It has fractured in half and has led to an endless war ever since. We've been in war in that region now for over 20 years. And that war has now escalated into a war in Afghanistan, Syria, Ethiopia, Egypt, Yemen, Oman, and continuing into surrounding regions. The destruction of Libya. Like, and it was all predicated on a massive, enormous, completely in your face, totally real lie. And if they're lying about that, what else are they lying about? And the answer is basically everything. Basically everything. That if the Western media is reporting about something, chances are good it's a lie. Or at least it's half true. And if it's true of that, of course it's going to be true about something like communism. Of course they're going to look at their ideological antagonist and declare that it was a failure, even though it was obviously a success. And of course they're going to say that the missteps or the things that occurred in communism is the worst atrocity that has ever occurred, even though when you look at them, it makes total fucking sense. That when the Americans fight the Confederates, when the Northerners fight the Confederates, it's in order to free people from the shackles of slavery. But when Stalin fights the kulaks, it's an illegitimate attack against peasants. Even though it's exactly the same story. That the kulaks were the slavers in the equation. And that Stalin was freeing wage slaves from slavery in order to do land redistribution, to get rid of the Confederates of his time and in his territory. So when we do it, freedom. When they do it, totalitarian oppression. Interesting. And that's the way it goes. And sometimes the lies are unbelievably huge. Mao killed 100 million people in a famine. Mao killed 100 million people in a famine. This is a real thing that definitely happened. It makes total sense that a full 10% of a population would be killed in a famine, and there would be no refugee crisis, no photos of it, no one writing about it, no political analysis talking about it, no one actually seeing it when it actually happened, it makes total sense that this historical event that definitely occurred has no evidence whatsoever to support it. Logic. The lies that the U.S. empire is willing to tell are without depth. There's no bottom. That if they think it will work, they will do it. And that is the hard truth. If they think they can convince the populace to go to war for the benefit of the empire with a lie, they will say that lie, and it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, what if the U.S. armed Hamas? I've heard a more interesting theory to me than the U.S. armed Hamas is that this is a false flag event. I've seen that theory that that the United States actually did the invasion themselves. That they are the ones that fired the rockets and they sent people in there to do this, so that they could have the justification they needed to finally wipe the Gaza Strip out, which is their goal, obviously. Like, the goal is the final cleansing. It's the final solution, right? They want to throw these people in the ovens. That's what they're doing. They're throwing the people in the ovens at this point. And they know that public sentiment is steadily turning against them, and so they feel like they need to speed things up. So that should public sentiment finally turn against Israel, they can go, well, look, they're all gone. They're all gone, right? There's no one to save. Like, and by the time public sentiment actually turns, they can be like, but that was the previous people. You know, that was like Joe Biden and the old guard, Hillary Clinton and Obama and all of these guys, right? All of those guys are gone, right? So you can't even punish these guys. They're all dead and gone, right? And we can't do anything for the Palestinians because they're all dead too. So there's no reason to stop funding Israel based on this idea. Let us keep our military base in the region, right? Like, that's what they're doing. They're getting these Palestinians into the oven as fast as they can so that when public sentiment turns against Israel on this exact principle of genocide, there'll be nothing to do. There'll be nobody to save, right? And so the theory is that the United States itself launches this as a false flag attack in order to turn public sentiment against the Palestinians in order to justify the continued ethnic cleansing of the region. That's a narrative that makes a type of sense. Again, just like the Russia idea, I would need to see a piece of documentation before I actually started saying that that's what happened. But it's not illogical. It has a type of rationale. It's something the United States has done before. So, thanks, Timothy. I appreciate it, my man. It isn't too likely the U.S. armed Hamas, but frankly, if you want to create a condition to give one justification to make moves you usually can't do, give your enemies the means. Yeah, there you go. But animal rights versus human rights is easier to solve if it's natural rights versus natural rights. I don't know if I understand your... Oh, I see. This is about that. Yeah, okay. Cuba created 2 COVID-19 vaccines despite the fact that they have great difficulties in obtaining the necessary materials for it. They sent it to Vietnam, Iran, and China. Yep. A fact that I like to say about Cuba. Cuba has more doctors than Canada. Not per capita. More doctors. That should be considered a massive embarrassment for Canada. Should be considered a massive embarrassment for Canada. That a small island nation, a communist nation, has more doctors than us. Like, fuck off. Capitalism is the best way to distribute resources. Yeah, okay, bud. If a genocide happens in the forest and no one sees it, did it happen? Hi, Mr. Moon. How you doing? Bread cultist, I'm sleepy. Yeah, it is tiring, isn't it? You know, it's tiring. Fortunately, there are people out there who are actually fighting the good fight. Here's a couple articles, one from the Maple, one from the World Socialist website. Actually, I've got two from the Maple. Will anyone ever ask if pro-Israel ralliers support mass killing? Palestinians are constantly subjected to a level of scrutiny never applied to supporters of the civilian slaughtering apartheid state. This word slaughter. If you've been involved in pro-Palestinian activism for any amount of time, you will at some point have been asked, do you support Hamas? The purpose of this question is threefold. One, to set up a prerequisite of condemning Palestinians before speaking on Palestine. Two, to immediately try to put Palestine supporters on the defensive. And three, to misrepresent Hamas as the entirety of Palestinian resistance. When somebody says, do I support Hamas? I say, yes, I support Luke Skywalker. But what about, and I say, we don't have the moral authority to critique Hamas. Like, I have no opinion, no comment. Like, sure, like, don't you think their tactics are brutal? Probably. They're fighting fucking Darth Vader. There's no depth, there's no bottom. Andy Goldstein. If Saturday's attack was a false flag operation, wouldn't you expect Hamas to deny involvement? I haven't heard any denial. Yeah, that's a fair point, Andy. Actually, that's a really good point, Andy. Good for you, bud. You came in with a real good skeptical point, and I think you kind of defanged the whole thing. That Hamas is sitting... So Hamas is not sitting there being like, whoa, wait a minute. If anything, it's the opposite. Hamas is like, yeah, we fucking did that. Yeah, woo, Hamas. So, good point, Andy. Check mark. The question has been an issue facing pro-Palestine activists in media interviews and spaces in the West since Hamas was created. Pro-individuals and groups, meanwhile, have almost never had to contend with such a question from journalists or politicians. This hasn't changed amidst the latest war. Politicians in Canada across the political spectrum, from Toronto's Mayor Olivia Chow to Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, explicitly framed Palestine rallies in major cities as being in support of Hamas before they even took place. Journalists, from opinion columnists to news reporters, also picked up the framing. An October 10th article from the Globe and Mail, for example, had the headline, Trudeau condemns rallies in support of Hamas. The lack of quotations around the descriptor of the rallies means the paper took Trudeau's view of the rallies as fact. One CBC News anchor went further, asking Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly if protesters at the rally should be prosecuted for supporting terrorism. She didn't say no. No such questions have been asked or assumptions made of the thousands of people who attended pro-Israel rallies the same day, who held up the state's flag as its army terrorized the entire population of Gaza. In the past few days, Israel has killed more than 950 Palestinians, including hundreds of children, and injured more than 5,000, caused more than 180,000 people to flee their homes, repeatedly attacked the border crossing into Egypt, where some Gazans have been able to go, cut off food, water, and electricity, and so much more. Familiar? Israel's officials, meanwhile, have employed genocidal language. On Monday, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant told the public, I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly. Yesterday, he added that the army had released all restraints, and they will regret this moment. Gaza will never return to what it was. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Gazans to leave now because we will operate forcefully everywhere, knowing the overwhelming majority of them can't do so. Yet, despite this, it appears that none of those who went to pro-Israel rallies were met with any tough questions. There were not just rallies to commemorate the civilians who were killed. They were explicitly cheering on Israel. And some of the politicians who condemned the pro-Palestine rallies for allegedly supporting violence showed up in droves to send their best wishes to the apartheid state. In Toronto, there was Chow, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, and a couple city councillors. Ottawa's rally, meanwhile, drew Trudeau as well as Conservative Party of Canada leader Pierre Poilievre. All of these politicians had either expressed concern about the Palestine rallies or civilians being killed, or both. And yet, there they were, uncritically cheering on the Israeli state as it rained death and destruction upon Gazian citizens and prepared for a ground invasion of the territory. Just the latest example in an unbroken string of Israeli war crimes and international law violations. Of course, though, politicians engage in the sort of behavior they accuse some of their constituents of does not make them as bad. It makes them worse. What ability does the average Canadian accused of supporting Hamas have to actually support the group in any material way? Very little, especially given the Canadian government's designation of the group as a terrorist entity. Meanwhile, politicians like Trudeau can, and have, provided weapons, votes, political cover, and much more for Israel, allowing its slaughter of Palestinians to continue. As such, the political attacks on Palestinian rallies shouldn't be taken as genuine expressions of concern for civilians. Instead, they're merely cynical attempts to look out for an ally abroad and its supporters here, while a servile media follows along. Brad Cultist, I tried pointing that out, but YouTube wouldn't show my comment. Friggin' YouTube. Gold star for YouTube, Brad Cultist. Mr. Moon, protests in support of Palestine happened in Sydney on Sunday, though the New South Wales Premier is saying they won't happen because suppressing free speech is cool and normal. Yeah, totally cool and normal. Compton, the IDF has killed many Palestinian warriors of virtue. How many capable, able-bodied, fair-minded warriors have died from IDF violence for fighting fair and with honor? Anything is a better choice than passively laying down and deciding to not exist simply because the children of settlers should be unharmed. Yeah. Mr. Moon writes, took no time for the Sydney Opera House to be lit up in the colors of the Israeli flag, of course. Yeah, that is lame and vulgar. Yeah. Just wait, guys. Wait for all the Facebook flags. Like, come on. Come on. I stand with Israel. It's going to happen, right? Remember how everything turned blue and yellow for a period of time? Well, get ready for blue and white. Get ready for the stars. Get ready. Everything's going to be like white and blue. I stand with Israel. Slava Israel, or whatever Nazi phrase they're going to come up with. What is like the Nazi war cry for the Israelis? What's the Zionist war cry? What do they say? Right? Like Ukraine has the explicitly Nazi Slava Ukraine, right? So like what is it for the Zionists? Like it'll probably just be Hail Hitler, right? Like it'll just straight up be. Like, and they'll just go in there like Nazi salutes. God, that's grim. Oh man. Boy, howdy, we're a bunch of stupid monkeys, eh? Like, just a bunch of dumb monkeys. Just a bunch of dumb apes. Gallivanting about like we know what we're up to. Like, just pretending like we're in control and, like, just doing the dumbest possible shit. Just doing... Oh, yeah, Project 2025. Bro, I gotta tell you, I don't care. I value and appreciate your position, but I just like this is adjacent to it, so this is worth bringing up in regards to that. For those who don't know, Project 2025 is a document that came out of the Republican Party, the organizations and the think tanks that support it, such as the Heritage Foundation. And I was reading through it on the stream with the goal of reading through the whole document. And it is basically just crazy fascism. Like just crazy, nutty fascism. So adjacent to that, Eric. And I probably will get back to it, my man. But this has taken over for sure. Republicans pick man who compared himself to David Duke as the next House Speaker. Republicans have nominated Representative Steve Scalise as their next House Speaker, and that speaks volumes. House Republicans agreed Wednesday to nominate Steve Scalise, who once reportedly described himself as David Duke without the baggage, for Speaker. 8 Republicans voted last week to vacate the Speaker and oust Kevin McCarthy, plunging the House into chaos. The chamber is set to vote later on Wednesday on a new Speaker, but the GOP has struggled to get its act together. Republicans voted 113 to 98 to put current House Majority Steve Scalise forward as McCarthy's replacement. He will now face a vote from the full chamber that will be split at least along party lines. Democrat plan to back Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. But it won't be an easy road for Scalise. He was up against Jim Jordan for the Republican Speaker nomination, and he may still get some pushback from lawmakers loyal to Jordan. Representative Max Miller told reporters that he'll still vote for Jordan on the floor, even if Scalise gets the caucus nomination, a move others may follow. Representative Ken Buck has said he'll vote for neither candidate, but guaranteeing to draw out the process. A Scalise victory means that the farthest right wing of the Republican Party would be in complete control. Scalise has refused to say outright that the 2020 election was legitimate, instead remaining loyal to Donald Trump. But even long before that, Scalise has embraced the extremist movement. At the start of the congressional career, Scalise reportedly described himself as being like Duke, the former head of the Ku Klux Klan, but without the baggage. Scalise also attended a white supremacist conference that Duke organized in 2002. Scalise later described attending the conference as a mistake. But Duke said Scalise was invited because he would communicate a lot, and that was friendship with Kenny Knight, Duke's political advisor. Dude, we let these guys do anything they like so long as they turn around and go, oopsie, right? Literally, Justin Trudeau could pick up a gun, shoot someone in the back of the head while doing a Nazi salute with a swastika on his arm, end the Hitler stash, screaming Heil Hitler, and then just look at the camera like Jim from The Office and go, oopsie, and we would all go, oh, oopsie. He said, oopsie, it was a mistake. Just another innocent mistake, like when he did blackface, or when he did Aladdin face, or when he honored a Nazi in Parliament, or when he evoked the Emergencies Act. Oopsie-doo! We just let these guys do anything they like. I'm going to go attend a white supremacist rally with a bunch of Ku Klux Klan members. That was a mistake. Oh, it was a mistake. It's fine. Yeah, he said it was a mistake. It was fine. Remember to always ask the important questions, too. Like, what has Natalie Portman said on the subject? Dude, I would be blown away if Natalie Portman has said something on the subject. Although, I'll tell you straight up, if Britney Spears or Pamela Anderson have anything to say about this, I want to know. These are the important voices of our generation. Barbed wire was a tour de force. Wonder what will happen to Israel once the U.S. goes to war with China and can't support Israel anymore. I mean, Israel will be part of the plan. Like, Israel will be part of the plan. Like it's really important to remember, bud, how tied in to the system, to the military system Israel is. Like, Israel, like when we gave money to Ukraine, that was considered its own special package, right? That we were creating a special package for Ukraine, and that would go into its own bill, and we would send that money and send those arms and send all that kind of stuff to Ukraine through its own kind of thing. Israel has become built into the military budget. That there are lines in the military budget that is put aside for discretionary spending towards Israel. And and every single military budget that goes up includes funding for Israel in it as just a course of its existence. And nobody in the system of power debates that or believes that it should not happen, right? Bernie Sanders thinks that it should happen. AOC thinks that it should happen, right? Like everybody in the system of power believes that sending money by default as a course of the existence of Israel, it should happen. So when America goes to war against China over Taiwan, when they do it, Israel will be part of it. It will be part of their arrangement and part of their organization, right? Like, I can't really overstate how, if it ever came to the point where America stopped funding Israel, if that ever actually happened, it would be the American empire finally saying out loud to everyone in the world that it's over. That will be the last thing that it does. That their adventurism in the Middle East and Africa and into Southeast Asia and all of that is over. Because they have put so much energy and so much focus on creating this massive military base in the Middle East, that for them to stop funding it, for them to shut the door and to leave, would signal to the rest of the world that the empire is over. And so they're never going to do it. It will be the last thing that happens. Like, it's an inevitability that it does happen, because eventually the American empire collapses and it can't sustain itself any longer. And so it will just do it because it can't do anything else. But they'll sacrifice a lot. They'll sacrifice a lot before they sacrifice Israel. But they will eventually sacrifice Israel. Yeah, Americans don't even know that Jews have national health care and they don't. That's the best, isn't it, Isaac? Literally, we are funding a nation so that they can have health care, and we don't, and Americans don't give health care to their own citizens. That is so fucking wild to me. Like, it's actually wild to me. Like, how can you possibly pretend like you are a civilization? How can you possibly pretend that you are a society when you are not actually providing health care to your citizens? Like, in what way are you united? Yeah, Eric, I think that's it. Like, perhaps next week. Like, I'm not abandoning it. Like, I still have it. Like, and I still know where to go with it. But, like, this is massive, dude. Like, this is a massive world event. This is something that I'm going to be talking about, if only for my own mental clarity. You know what I mean? Like right now, the idea of the Mandate 2025 thing, it just seems so petty and unimportant. It just seems very unimportant. Like, I acknowledge that it is important that we know what's in that document. Right? Yeah. Yes. Eric, yes. Eric really wants me to read that document, man. You're all about it, eh, bud? You're just like, read that. Do it now. We have to know. We got to know what those guys are saying over there. If we don't know what they're saying, then we'll never know. You're right, though. Like, it's some straight up fascist Nazi shit. Like, dude, the introduction was crazy. It was crazy what they were writing. But, I mean, what do we expect? They're literally electing like a David Duke, like a guy who's straight up saying, I'm David Duke without the baggage. You can be the House Speaker. Like, in Canada, our House Speaker invites Nazis to be honored by Parliament. In America, they elect Nazis to be the House Speaker. It's like Canada said, wow, no one will ever be closer to Nazism than our House Speaker in the West. And America went, hold my beer. Challenge accepted. Straight up, man. Let's elect a white supremacist. Let's do it. Let's go. Let's have him show up to the House wearing the Ku Klux Klan hood. Let's go. Let's just have it. Let's go. Why are we pretending? Why are we fucking around here? Let's go. Let's get the costumes. Let's get the masks. Let's get the goofy shit. That's what I'm really looking forward for, you guys. This is what I am really looking forward to. I am really looking forward to the silly costumes, right? Like Trump is pretty. He's pushing towards the silly costumes, right? Like he's got the orange face going on, right? His look is like a silly costume, right? His whole thing. No. We've got better pictures of this orange face. Like he has showed up with like some straight up orange face. Like this is like iconic Donald Trump. Right. Like we got some silly costumes going on, but the silly costumes are coming, you guys. I feel it. I feel like the silly costumes are coming, and I that's what I'm really here for. That's what I'm really here for. I've been building this entire profile this entire time. I've been building up a subscriber base. I've been dedicated to this cause, to doing all of this. I am pushing forward on this so that when the silly costumes show up, I can really, really revel in them. And they're coming, man. They're coming. We're gonna get some silly ass costumes. Like what the Germans did was some silly ass costumes, right? What the British did was some silly ass costumes. Just silly. And they're all like when Empire goes all the way, when it finally takes the mask off, it's almost as though it needs to announce to the world that the mask is off through this silly ass costume, right? That it's like, okay, we've finally done it. Mask off, silly costume. This is what we want to do. And like I'm so looking forward to it. I'm really, really looking forward to it. And like, anybody have any ideas about what it's going to look like? Like the red hat, right? The MAGA hat, right? The MAGA hat is a kind of a start of that, right? It's the start of a silly costume, right? You can buy a MAGA hat for $30. Phenomenal. Make America great again, right? The MAGA hat was sort of part of that, right? It was a type of branding. It was a way to create an in group. Like Donald Trump knew what he was doing, right? He knew what he was doing, but it's not silly enough. It's got to be sillier. This thing needs a little thing on top of it. It needs a little spin dial or something. Yeah, think of all the new memes. Exactly. I'm so looking forward to it. Just a way for all of these Nazis to say, yeah, we're all Nazis in the silliest possible way. Oh yeah, like, you know who else is like got this going on? The Patriot Front. Patriot Front. These guys have got some silly ass costumes going on, man. Like, no. Oh yeah, it's the shield. It's the shield. Right? Like the costume they're wearing itself is not actually that silly, but the shield with like the American thing on it, like they're fucking Captain America. That's some silly ass shit right there, dude. Look at how fucking silly this is. Like, and it's not going to be a far leap, you know. They've got this whole look of like the blue with the white, like the blue with the white thing, and then a tan hat with tan khakis, right? But this is just the prototype, right? When these guys finally get enough money, when they finally get enough, like this is going to become like crisper. It's going to become more well-designed. It's going to become like a thing. And they're going to have like this blue with the tan and the white, and that's going to be all considered part of it. And their shields are going to be like big American flags, right? It's ridiculous. Mikhail writes, I have a hard time reading things all the way through these days. I blame technology. A part of why the mandate thing has gotten a little bit difficult is that I got very technical, right? Like, I am interested in reading the document to find the sauce, the real, and Article B, Section 53, rounding up the Jews. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, the Secretary of State's position is to organize the proletariat against I'm not looking for, that's very technical. The role of the Secretary of State is to respond and report to the President of the United States during periods of crisis. And to deliver, I don't want to read 200 pages of that. I really want to find the, actual policies and actual ideas that are actually, worth talking about and worth looking at. And it's tough with a document that's that large because I've already had to skip sections of it because it was like that. It was just a very technical. Like if I were to read through the Bible, let's say I read through the Bible on this cast, right? Let's just say all of a sudden you guys are like, John, read through the Bible. Let's do it. Let's go. Start Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, right? Let's do it. I would still skip the book of Numbers, I do not want to sit here for 5 hours saying, and Hebabah begat Jehovah, who begat Jeshaphat, who begat the nephew Jovadan, which is after the river valley of Chakambla, right? I'm just not, yeah. Article 8, Section 3, Subsection A. Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is a mental disorder characterized by a lifelong pattern of exaggerating feelings of self-importance and an excessive need for... Left me hanging, bread cultist. Left me hanging. I know, you can only type so much in these comments. I know. Okay, guys, I think we've reached the end of this one. Gonna end it a little bit early. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.